for April 7th, 2026. Please call the roll.
Councilmember Adler.
Here.
Councilmember Joanat.
Present.
Councilmember Veros.
Here.
Vice Mayor Rubio.
Here.
And Mayor Armstrong.
Here. Okay, we have one item of new business, and that is item 2.1. It's a public hearing. Appeal of Planning Commission Resolution number 02-26, approving the Orchards Development Project. And at this point, I would like to have the details regarding the appeal procedure protocol explained by the city attorney.
Thank you, Mayor Armstrong. The appeal procedure is going to be as follows. First, staff is going to give a report to the council regarding the project approval and the merits of the appeal, including a recommendation to the city council. Then council will ask questions of staff, and then appellant will have a maximum of 15 minutes total speaking or presentation time, and may reserve some time of that out of that 15 minutes for a rebuttal that would take place just before the close of the hearing. The city council will then ask questions of the appellant, followed by a presentation by the applicant, who will also have a maximum of 15 minutes total. The city council will then ask questions of the applicant and then open the public hearing and allow members of the public to speak for up to 3 minutes each. Then at the mayor's and the council's discretion, we could have a recess to allow the appellant some time to collect his thoughts for rebuttal, followed by the rebuttal itself. Then the council will close the public hearing. City council then will discuss and ask any remaining questions of staff or the city attorney. And then the city council will be asked to make a motion to either uphold the appeal, deny the appeal, or partially uphold the appeal and to revise the resolution as necessary. If there is a vote to uphold the appeal or to modify the resolution as presented, then I would ask that the council make a motion to bring the revised resolution back to the next regularly scheduled council meeting for its approval at that meeting, and continue to that hearing. That would be the 5th of the SB 335 meetings allowed. And with that, I will turn it back to you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, all right, thank you for that. And I'll just say that while this is technically a de novo hearing, the appellant has raised 8 specific appeal points. And as such, it's my opinion that the council should focus on those appeal points this evening. So the other thing is I asked the council to hold your questions till the end of each of the presentations, okay? All right, and with that, I want to turn it over to Cindy Yee, our Planning Division Manager, for the staff presentation.
Thank you and good evening. Tonight we're here to hear a appeal of the Planning Commission's approval of the Orchards Development Project. The project is located at 6001 Bollinger Canyon Road, approximately 92 acres. It has a general plan designation and zoning designation of downtown mixed use south. The project spans quite a number of years. If we start at the very beginning when Sunset Development, the applicant, purchased the property in 2022, there was a series of public meetings, study sessions, and that took place with both the City Council as well as the Planning Commission, and then a variety of committees. The applicant had taken that feedback that was received through those series of public meetings and updated and refined their land use plan. That land use plan was incorporated into the General Plan 2040, which the city adopted in December 2023. Within the general plan document, there's a policy that specifically identifies how the Orchards project area would be programmed. There's 6 different, Yes, 6 different policy programming items that are included within that policy. And it sets the framework for the types of housing units, the commercial component that would be included as part of the project, a variety of residential and non-residential mixed-use configurations that would be closer to Bollinger Canyon Road, along with Centralized Park and retail line boulevards. There's pocket parks that are incorporated as part of the expect to be incorporated as part of the project, as well as preservation of the heritage oak trees that exist on the property. And so in addition to the land use policy, there's also a diagram that's included in the general plan. And that diagram identifies the expected land use design of the 92-acre development. So fast forward to 2024, when the applicant filed formal applications and submitted what we know as the Orchards Development Project that's in front of you this evening. There's a total of 7 applications that are active with the city. 6 of those were approved by the Planning Commission in February. Those applications include the major subdivision to subdivide the property, 2 development plans. The first development plan would allow for the construction of the neighborhood district that's within the development area. And then a second development plan for the master plan, 20-year build out of the Orchards project. I mentioned one of the applications is currently deferred. That would be the development agreement that would implement the project over a 20-year period in exchange for additional community-wide benefits. That will trail after any approval of the project. There's also an architectural review application, a tree removal application, and environmental review application. And so these next couple of slides just go over really briefly the project itself and summarizes the applications that have been made. I mentioned there's 2 development plan applications. And so the first development plan application that I'll refer to as the Orchards Master Plan application. And that sets the 20-year development framework for how orchards will be developed. And it identifies that there are going to be 3 districts within the Orchards development area, referred to as the mixed-use district, the multifamily district, and the neighborhood district. So in the Orchards Master Plan, it identifies the different types of housing types that are going to be within each of these development districts, and the types of units and how many units are expected within each of those districts. It's important to note that any future development plan applications that are filed in the multifamily and the mixed-use district will have its own separate entitlement approval. And so this development plan allows for a 20-year master plan, but it doesn't specifically entitle the development to be able to construct the units that are in the multifamily or the mixed-use districts. And so this next slide is just a side-by-side comparison of the land use plan that's in the general plan document on the left-hand side of the screen. And then on the right-hand side, the Orchards Development Plan. And this is just to compare how does the master plan address or fit with the general plan land use. And you'll see that the typologies, the housing typologies essentially match what the general plan land use diagram envisions. In addition to the development plan application, the applicant has also submitted the Orchards Design Guidelines. And this document provides a vision for how the Orchards community will be built throughout the 20-year period. The city has objective design standards that we have citywide. So in lieu of the citywide objective design standards that the city has adopted, the applicant is requesting that we use this Orchards design guidelines that is specific to this 92 acres as the guidelines for how the developments will be coordinated and integrated so that there is compatibility amongst the districts. Architectural compatibility, landscape compatibility, et cetera. The second application that's been filed for development plan is specifically the entitlement of the neighborhoods district. And so the neighborhoods district is a total of 368 units with 58 optional accessory dwelling units or ADUs. And this just shows that the neighborhood district is primarily on the southern end of the development area, and you'll see on the west side, it's bound by 680 freeway. On the south, it's adjacent to an existing residential development, and then to the east is existing office. In addition to the requirements of the development standards for construction of the neighborhoods district, there's also obligations that a project has to meet other city ordinances. One of those includes the affordable housing ordinance. The city has an inclusionary housing ordinance that requires any project to provide at least 15% of their units as deed restricted as affordable units. The Orchards project in total will provide 16.2%, and it'll be a mix of for sale and rental units. The table identifies how that percentage is broken down. You'll see that the project is going to make a commitment to exceed 5% very low income units. And because of that, the project would qualify for state density bonus. And then focusing in specifically to the neighborhoods district and how the neighborhoods district will meet its affordable housing obligation. The neighborhoods district is expected to be 368 market rate units. In addition to, so in order for the neighborhoods district to meet their affordability requirement, the applicant's proposal is to include 100 units at what we call the Orchards Affordable Site. That's within the multifamily area of the Orchards project. Of those 100 units, 99 of those will be rental units affordable to very low and low income households. The Orchards Affordable will be constructed in partnership with Eden Housing. And so similar to other projects the city has, the applicant is requesting a alternative means of compliance rather than constructing the affordable units in the neighborhoods district. Those units would then be provided at the standalone Orchards Affordable Site. And this slide just goes over the policy of state density bonus and how projects can qualify. Projects have the ability to request waivers of development standards, as well as reduction of parking standards and concessions. This project is not asking for any concessions, and it meets its parking requirements, but it is asking for 6 waivers of different development standards that would normally apply to a project. So the proposed project is consistent with all of the other land use obligations in terms of development standards, with the exception of these 6 waivers. So continuing on with the review process that's taken place, after the applications were submitted and deemed complete, the applicant went to the city's architectural review board for additional feedback on their project. The ARB has made a recommendation of approving the project with some specific feedback that they've provided. In your attachments, there's a written response from the applicant about how they've responded to the ARB comments. And then a second component of the review that we wanted to highlight is related to the environmental review. The city hired a consultant, First Carbon Solutions, to assist the city in preparing the CEQA analysis. I'm going to turn these next slides over to Mary Bean with First Carbon to go over the environmental review for the project.
Good evening, Mary Bean from First Carbon Solutions. So the California Environmental Quality Act applies to projects that require discretionary approval by a state or local agency, such as yourself. CEQA encourages lead agencies to look for streamlining opportunities, to utilize analysis that's in an underlying certified EIR, such as your general plan EIR, which is the basis for this streamlining document. The city certified your general plan EIR in 2023, and it establishes development densities across the city. The general plan also evaluated, build out scenarios. So build out across the city based on the land use designations established in your land use map. This is some language from section 15183, which is the streamlining provision used for the document that we prepared. 15183 document. CEQA mandates that projects which are consistent with the development density established by the general plan policies for which an EIR has been certified shall not require additional environmental review except as might be necessary to see whether there are project-specific significant effects that are peculiar to the project or to the site. And it's important to note that 15183 is both a streamlining provision and it's a statutory exemption, which is a higher level than a categorical exemption. In considering approving a project under 15183, CEQA limits the lead agency's analysis to 4 areas where environmental effects are peculiar to the project or the site, where effects were not analyzed as significant effects in the prior EIR, but would be significant now, where effects are potentially significant off-site impacts or cumulative impacts that were not discussed in the underlying EIR, or previously identified significant effects would be more severe or adverse than what was analyzed in the underlying EIR. So the document we prepared did all that, used that process. It analyzed all of these topics under CEQA, alphabetically from aesthetics to wildfire and everything in between. It used 2 different levels of analysis. So as Cindy explained, there's some portions of the site where it's more conceptual in nature and other portions, the neighborhood district, where we have more project level detail. So the 15183 analysis utilized what's called program level analysis for the mixed use and multifamily district, where things are more conceptual, and then project level analysis for the neighborhood district, the interim area. And then in some cases, we combined the analysis where it was clear there'd be no difference between the 2. So as we noted, the general plan EIR was certified in 2023. The proposed project's impacts on all environmental factors have been previously analyzed and mitigated consistent with that general plan and other regulatory frameworks or uniformly applied standards. There are no project-specific impacts that are peculiar to the project or the site, so we determined that no further CEQA review is required. Back to Cindy.
Thank you, Mary.
Okay. So we've gone through ARB review, environmental review, and then moving on to Planning Commission review. So upon completion of the CEQA consistency checklist, the Planning Commission held 3 public hearings on the Orchards Development Project, started in December, and then their last meeting was February. That should say 2036, but it feels like 36. On February 3rd, the Planning Commission adopted Resolution 02-26 that's attached to your staff report this evening, approving the Orchards Development Project applications. And so the city has a 10-day appeal period that is identified in the city's municipal code for any discretionary, approvals that have been granted by the Planning Commission. Within 10 days, any appellant can file an appeal, and an appeal was filed by Mr. Brian Swanson on February 12th, contesting the Planning Commission's action. The appellant also provided a supplement to their appeal on February 13th, and the appeal exhibits A through H are also attached to your staff report this evening. And as City Attorney mentioned, there were 8 grounds for appeal reasons that were identified in the applicant's supplement document, as well as his February 12th document. They've, in the staff report, there's a full description of the text that was from the appeal, and then city's response to the appeal points. Just going through really quickly, the first appeal point related to the use of the CEQA guideline section 15183 for the 20-year phase master plan. The city did evaluate, as Mary had stated, both project level actions as well as program level designations of the mixed use and the multifamily districts, and found that the exemption for this project doesn't authorize any approval of any unknown future projects without appropriate environmental review. The approval of a master plan doesn't foreclose future city discretion. So city has the ability and must evaluate any projects that require CEQA analysis. And so any of those actions will have, any of those applications will have a future action related to CEQA for those projects. Project phasing also doesn't preclude reliance on section 15183. Again, as Mary mentioned, there's both a program level and a project level, and an expectation that any future projects would also have their own environmental review. And so there's other points that are in the staff report, but those are some of the staff's response to the initial, the first appeal point. The second appeal point was related to the reliance on the city's general plan 2040 EIR, and that it doesn't take into account any of the regulatory baseline changes post 2023. In the staff report, it again just identifies that each project that was listed by the appellant has had its own independent CEQA analysis and conclusions prior to those projects being approved by the city. Each of those projects have not identified any new significant impacts, and that all of these projects have had less intensity than what was anticipated in that general plan document. Again, the checklist that was prepared identified no environmental problems due to the project's proposed waivers, including reductions to the floor area ratio. So moving on to appeal point number 3 was related to transportation vehicle miles traveled. The city has prepared the applicant has prepared VMT analysis, and the city has done peer review of that VMT analysis. We've incorporated that into our consistency checklist, and incorporated as necessary any of the general plan mitigation measures that would be required to address VMT. CEQA doesn't require the city to reanalyze or remitigate any absent substantial evidence of a peculiar effect. And so no such evidence has been presented, and therefore the consistency checklist is appropriately evaluated the potential impacts of VMT. The fourth appeal point is related to the technical studies that had been prepared by the applicant, and concern related to impartiality and the city's duty to independent judgment. We can confirm that the city has and does with every project, independently evaluate the methodology and the reports. There's multiple rounds of peer review that's done with our reports that include both planning staff as well as our traffic engineer and our engineering staff. Any of the applicant prepared technical studies are independently reviewed either by city or in consultation with the city's environmental consultant. And so any of the studies that are attached to the checklist or as part of the administrative record has had city peer review before those studies are considered appropriate. The fifth appeal point was related to tribal cultural resources and the applicability of AB 52 and whether or not any of the cultural resources sensitivities have been resolved. You'll see in one of the chapters of the checklist, there's a section related to cultural resources and quite in-depth analysis of what type of research was done, what outreach was conducted. And although the city is not obligated because the types of applications that have been filed do not require consultation with Native American tribes, we have responded to any communication that's been received by the tribes and specifically in the Planning Commission conditions of approval, which has been carried over into the City Council's draft resolution, conditions that continue to require tribal monitoring and protection of any inadvertently discovered cultural and tribal resources. The sixth appeal point is related to the appeal process itself and the transparency and meaningful public participation. So the Planning Commission's decision was based on numerous findings that you can see that are carried into the City Council's resolution. All of those relied on conditions of approval and stated findings of fact before that the project could be approved. Concerns related to the appeal process itself, all of that is dictated in the city's municipal code. So anything that is related to the appeal process or requests to change that should be pursued separately from this project review. The seventh appeal point that was raised was the appeal process lacking opacity and lack of guardrails. And as the staff report has stated, the city has followed the state and city's zoning ordinance related to the appeal process. And as stated with the last appeal reason, any concerns related to the appeal process, the appellant should pursue those through separate from the project. And then the last appeal reason that was identified in the supplement was just related to the terminology correction and the corrections noted in the staff report. The city's response to the related tribal consultation still remains unchanged. Okay, so on to the summary. In summary, the project does propose a 20-year master plan, which is based on the General Plan 2040 land use policy for development of 2,510 units, including accessory dwelling units. The design guidelines will apply to all three districts, and they would create a specificity and continuity throughout the build-out period. The first phase of the project, which is the neighborhoods district, meets the Orchards design guidelines as well as the zoning for the property, with the exception of those 6 waivers that, again, through state density bonus, has been requested. Orchards will provide over the minimum required affordable housing in accordance with the inclusionary housing ordinance. And a series of studies have been conducted to determine consistency with the city's land use, zoning ordinance, and then environmental requirements. So related to the grounds for the appeal, the city has evaluated and considered each of those grounds for appeal. The appeal, in the city's opinion, provides no new information that was not previously considered as part of the record. The project is consistent with the objectives, policies, general plan land use, and programs that are specified in the General Plan 2040. And the project will not result in significant effects to the environment as documented by the technical studies that have been provided. And so the recommendation this evening is to receive the staff report, and as Mr. Licenses has detailed out, to provide time for the appellant and applicant to respond to the appeal, and then open the public hearing and discuss and deliberate. For consideration this evening, staff has attached as attachment B, City Council Resolution 2026-040, requesting that the City Council consider denying the appeal filed by Brian Swanson, as well as approving the Orchards Development Project. So with that concludes staff's presentation. I can certainly take questions now, or the environmental consultant as well.
Yeah, let's go to the council and see if the council has any questions for either staff or Mary from First Carbon Solutions. And I'll just say from the outset, I appreciate that was a PowerPoint slide presentation. We have the full text of the appeal wording, as well as the full text of the city's response in the staff packet. So I appreciate that to all the 8 appeal points. So any questions by council for staff?
I just have a quick question, Cindy. Thank you for the presentation. So I wrote my note down here regarding cumulative impacts. Were those cumulative impacts already analyzed at the program level? That's what we're trying to. Oh, I'm so sorry. Thank you. Sorry. I'll repeat the question. Related to cumulative impacts, and I had this notation written down, but were the cumulative impacts already analyzed at the program level?
So yes. So remembering that the consistency checklist is taking originally the General Plan 2040 document, where that had an analysis of cumulative impacts in that document, and then taking those into consideration when preparing the checklist specifically for this project. The cumulative impacts were identified and incorporated in as part of the overall project's environmental analysis.
Thank you.
Okay, other questions for staff? Not seeing anybody jump here. Okay. Then thank you. We will move on to the appellant. And presentation by appellant Brian Swanson. And again, I ask council to hold your questions till the end.
Thank you. You're welcome. Good evening, City Council. My name is Brian Swanson. I am the appellant for the Orchards Development Project Appeal. Tonight, I am focusing on the adequacy of the city's California Environmental Quality Act, or CEQA record, for the Planning Commission's approvals of both the 20-year Orchards Master Plan and the first implementing district, the Neighborhood District, which is anticipated to take 7 years to complete. This is a record review presentation, not a policy speech. My goal is to help the council evaluate whether the city's reliance on CEQA guidelines section 15183 is procedurally sound and supported by substantial evidence. This appeal is not about whether growth, housing, or downtown transformation is desirable. Reasonable people may disagree on those policy issues. The question is whether the CEQA review for the approvals granted was current, adequately explained, and supported by substantial evidence in the record before the Planning Commission approved the project. It is much more narrow than all the information presented by staff. It is focused more on what First Carbon Solutions presented on and everything subsequent. Stated plainly, did the checklist and appendices show what was evaluated, what assumptions were used, and why the city concluded that no additional environmental review was required for the specific approval package at the February 3rd, 2026 Planning Commission meeting? CEQA guidelines section 15183 is a streamlined form of later project review for projects consistent with an adopted plan and zoning that have already had an EIR certified. But plan consistency is the entry point. It answers whether section 15183 may be used, not whether no further review is justified for the approvals granted. The city must first address the 4 section 15183 questions shown here. Peculiar effects, effects not previously analyzed as significant, offsite or cumulative effects, not previously discussed, and substantial new information showing previously identified significant effects or effects may be more severe. Finally, a notice of determination or NOD or notice of exemption NOE is a statute of limitations filing. It does not by itself demonstrate that the record contains the required analysis and explanation. The prior environmental and impact report, or EIR, the city relies on is the General Plan 2040 EIR certified on December 12, 2023, together with its CEQA findings, statement of overriding considerations, and mitigation, monitoring, and reporting program. That EIR established a program level framework and rezoned the former Chevron Park property, now Orchards, to Downtown Mixed Use South, or DMU South. The Orchard Section 15183 checklist treats the December 2023 adopted General Plan EIR as the prior EIR for comparison. The key question is whether the later checklist and appendices clearly and with evidence show the approvals granted in February 26 remain covered by the December 2023 adopted General Plan 2040 EIR. The General Plan 2040 EIR did not solve vehicle miles traveled, or VMT. The city adopted statements of overriding considerations, acknowledging significant and unavoidable VMT impacts, both at the project level and cumulatively, while describing future transportation demand management, or TMD, effectiveness as uncertain. A statement of overriding considerations does not erase an impact. It acknowledges that the city is approving despite a significant effect. VMT is connected to physical effects, and CEQA still requires the city to evaluate and disclose greenhouse gas emissions, air quality, noise, safety and circulation, public services, and other public health related physical effects. Because VMT was already known, a known CEQA sensitivity in December 2023, later reliance on section 15183 in February 2026 required a careful, transparent showing in the record. Tiering is intended to move from broader environmental review to narrow later approvals, using the prior EIR as a foundation and then focusing on what is new, changed, or project specific. Here, the city used the December 2023 adopted General Plan 2040 EIR to support a single approval package that is both broad and long-term. A 20-year master plan plus the neighborhood district with a multi-year build-out. The combination makes section 15183 explanation more demanding. If the city is approving a long-term framework now, while deferring some district details later, the record must clearly show what was evaluated and why no further review was warranted. By February 2026, several major actions had occurred after the December 2023 adopted General Plan 2040 EIR. 1, citywide objective design and development standards. 2, Ordinance 529, changing floor area ratio rules, the climate action plan, the updated climate action plan and CEQA greenhouse gas thresholds and guidance. 4, Ordinance 5434, changing parking standards. And 5, project-specific orchard design guidelines approved for use instead of the citywide guidelines. These actions are not the physical baseline in the sense of CEQA guidelines section 15125, but they are part of the current changed regulatory and analytical settings, which the city asserted no further review. For predominantly residential projects, changes in floor area variations, parking, and design standards can change assumptions related to VMT and associated environmental topics. This slide summarizes other major approvals and active construction near orchards. Projects that are occupied, under construction, or where demolition and grading are underway. The staff report describes these as having independent CEQA analysis. My concern is that this phase is greatly overstated. If many were processed through the similar tiering and streamlined determination, resulting in NODs or NOE filings without refreshed cumulative disclosures in the current setting. A series of streamlined filings do not automatically create a current cumulative baseline. The orchards record should show how the city evaluated the cumulative environment as of December 2025 before concluding no further review. Some current activity traces back to more substantial environmental review completed more than a decade ago. That does not mean older EIR expired. It means that the later record must show what was evaluated. The orchards approvals were not a simple confirmation of the DMU South designation. The city approved a 20-year master plan on the first implementing neighborhood district together with 6 state density bonus waivers. 3 waivers are especially relevant under CEQA. The project-wide floor area reduction, the substitution of project-specific orchards design guideline standards in place of the city's objective standards, and the 2 parking and circulation waivers. Section 15183 requires the record to explain, based on evidence, why these project-specific departures do not trigger further review under the 4 statutory questions. The first 2 sections of Section 15183 questions are whether or not there are effects peculiar to the project or parcel, and whether there are effects not previously analyzed as significant. The checklist conclusions are no peculiar effects and no significant effects. The adequacy issue is whether the record explains those conclusions for the approvals actually granted, not just whether conclusions were made or stated. Given a long horizon master plan, a multi-year district approval, 6 waivers, and a later project-specific design regime, the record should explain why these features do not create distinctive effects beyond the prior EIR's analysis and the city's uniformly applied standards. and the record should do more than compare density. It should point decision makers to the specific evidence and analysis that supports the no further review conclusion. The last two section 15183 questions are whether there are potentially significant offsite or cumulative impacts not discussed in the prior EIR, and whether substantial new information shows previously identified significant effects may be more severe. This is where the post-December 2023 approvals, policy changes, and real-world construction conditions matter. Even if the physical baseline is fixed, the section 15183 inquiry still asks whether the record evaluated today's offsite and cumulative setting. And because VMT was already significant and unavoidable at both the project and cumulative level in the General Plan 2020-40 EIR, the record should show whether later changes affect the severity or the feasibility, effectiveness, and/or enforceability of mitigation. This slide summarizes why the current record supporting analysis do not read like stable, no further review foundation for a 20-year master plan. First, Fair and Peer's work functions as a screening level VMT memorandum. The record does not clearly show incorporation of later ordinance changes, later waivers, or post-EIR cumulative setting, and the memo includes 3 reported note to reviewer warnings. Second, the climate record. The CAP and CEQA greenhouse gas checklist appears to have been applied mainly to the neighborhood district, while the master plan and later districts are treated less clearly. The record also does not clearly connect VMT screening to GHG analysis for the full approval package. Third, enforceability. Where the prior EIR acknowledges VMT significant and unavoidable and described TMD effectiveness as uncertain, the later record should show enforceable performance standards, monitoring, and triggers, not merely expected reductions. To close, the question is not whether the General Plan 2040 EIR provides context. It does. The question is whether the completed section 15183 checklist and appendices adequately answer the 4 required section 15183 questions for the approvals granted: the 20-year master plan, the neighborhood district, and the 6 waivers within a post-2023 regulatory and community setting. I respectfully ask the council to focus on whether the record demonstrates with substantial evidence why no further review is warranted for these approvals. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Brian. All right, over to council for questions of the appellant. No questions?
I'm trying to collect my thoughts. I apologize. Thank you, Mr. Swanson, for the presentation. I was expecting a point-by-point argument. I'm trying to gather my notes. So if you give me a minute,
Yeah.
Mayor, sorry.
All right.
Thank you.
All right, take a moment. And let me ask for Mr. Swanson right now, do you want to reserve some time for a rebuttal?
I saw 125 on the clock, so.
It's all right. I'll give you the time you need if you want to reserve some time for a rebuttal.
So my mentality going in was not, because obviously I've submitted lots and there's lots of legal ease to get through, right?
Okay.
However, what I see with the dog and pony show, in front of what Mary Bean presented and everything subsequent, the deferral of the master plan development agreement, there are more questions at this point because they weren't explained, but those are outstanding issues. The affordability issue, I'm not addressing that. Why it's discussed, I understand as part of the Orchards project, but it's not relevant to my appeal. That sets up a process issue too, right? Right there, you're restricted by 5 meetings. And so my appeal is actually short-circuiting that total 5 and not giving the public its additional meeting to consider. You may decide otherwise, but that's how it's set up. That's how I understand it here.
I have
Okay.
a- I-
All right, well, I will just say I do acknowledge that we got a document this afternoon, written comment that responded to the staff's responses. So I will acknowledge that for the record.
Okay, so I mean, I saw 125 on there. If I might pop up if something gets in my crawl after
Okay.
after the applicant speaks.
Thank you. All right, let's go to questions.
Oh, yeah. So just a follow-up question, Mr. Swanson. So which of the four factors are you saying is not satisfied? Let me start by asking you that question. Under section 15183. Do you have any evidence? Do you have anything that you could point to specifically that?
I mean, based on the staff report, especially, the staff report points you to the checklist in general. It doesn't excerpt the specific sections related to the four questions.
All right, can everybody hear that?
Yeah, I heard that. So there's nothing in the,
Maybe
in
go
the,
by line. Yeah, thank you.
there's
So-
nothing in the information you provided here tonight.
So again, there's the four questions. I don't think any of them have been answered adequately. The staff report especially only refers each and every one of you as staff supporting you to the general over 300-page record. That's an issue. There needs to be item by item extraction. I can go through that and have done that, especially for VMT and GHG. But a lot of that comes from my understanding, not staff's understanding. Staff is here to support you. I am here to present my appeal, not support you.
Other questions?
I have some questions.
All right, go
Okay,
ahead.
yeah, thanks for your presentation. And we are here to support all our community members and their concerns to address. So piggybacking to the question of council member.
Can you, yeah, thanks.
So piggybacking the question from council member Joinet. So the checklist evidence on that, are you concerned about the clarity of it is or the completeness of that checklist?
It's the detailed, that a lot of conjecture and conclusatory remarks are made. They're not substantiated by the data. The cumulative impact analysis, I said, relies on decades-old environmental impact reports, decades old. And so again, I mean, I'm not going to go through item by item. What I've done is specifically pulled out VMT because that was an issue in the general plan 2020-40 EIR. And I've looked at that in detail. I've looked at the GHG impact, which is connected to VMT, especially in light of the June 10th, 2025 approval of that new framework or the updated framework. And so again, when you're snipping it off and saying December 2023 and we're golden and not doing all this other analysis of those regulatory changes, that trickles far and wide.
Okay. I'm trying to make sure that I understand what is your concern so that we can provide a
It's a
Right.
complete inadequacy of,
complete inadequate.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Thank you. Thanks for that.
and again, I mean, if we want to get into it right now, absent my submittals, I can point to VMT. I can point to the VMT connected issues. I can point to the cultural issues, which there's being disrespect when the cultural person sent in a letter asking for respect.
Okay, my next question is about VMT and CHG.
Mhm.
So you mentioned VMT was significant, okay?
That,
So-
that was what was found by the December 2023 General Plan 2040 EIR.
Perfect, okay. So what level of analysis would you consider adequate for this project?
It's extremely hard to really guess at that, and that's why screening is frequently frowned upon. You need to do detailed modeling. Detailed modeling, especially when the previous EIR identified it as an issue. Second, even if the modeling is done detailed down to the nitty gritty, you need to make sure you're following through with mitigation measures to try and attempt to reduce those potential environmental impacts. Relying on CCTA for its county-wide role or jurisdiction here in San Ramon, that's not adequate, especially in the sense that orchards is a complete transformation of use. Complete transformation. And it's even more rich that Chevron's departure and continued disinvestment in California was celebrated by many here in California. Yet here we are locally determining whether or not the EIR or the checklist is adequate. Don't you find that pretty rich? I find that pretty rich.
Well, sorry, I didn't get the answer for my question, but I'll ask one follow-up question. So now, you know, this is for 20-year plan, right? The overall master plan is approved for 20 years, right? So how what method you think of to use for plan for VMT for these 20 years? Do you have some suggestion on that?
I suggested detailed VMT modeling. Once you have that detailed VMT modeling, you are more informed. The traffic operations impact, on the other hand, is more nuts and bolts, right? They suggested certain changes to striping and what have you. But that's not, that type of analysis is not part of CEQA anymore. Sure, the city did it. But again, you're asking me to come up with recommendations where I haven't seen the detailed modeling. That's the same situation that sets up here. Not enough analysis and conjecture. I'm not prepared to do that.
Okay, I have a follow-up question. You know, when we are talking about traffic and how the transportation methods are going on, it's keep evolving, right?
No, it's more than volume. It's people's habits. It's people's in and out. It's the design of how orchards is. It's the allowable parking and not any parking allowed that makes you or forces you to make those changes or those decisions before you show up on the orchards or in the San Ramon community, right?
Yeah, so you expect that we need to model based on the 20 years evolution process that is going to happen in the transportation. I want to make sure, is that's what you want?
Yeah, but it's again, It's not just the 20-year plan, it's the actual impacts of the neighborhood district too, and each and every subsequent district too. It's not a one-time thing where you can sort of rely on a decade-old EIO or decade-old VMT analysis. VMT and traffic choices, especially with Waze, right? With Waze and dynamic routing, and then you trying to outsmart Waze, traffic is hard to put in a box. You're asking me to put traffic in a box. I can't do that. The first step is to do detailed modeling for both the neighborhood district and the 20-year master plan.
Okay, and just now you said it is hard for you to put that 20-year in a box, okay? Okay, that's a point. But one thing, when these transportations are keep changing, evolving, and as you said, the Waze is one example, right? So
So
as the new technologies keep coming up, right? Electric, autonomous, there's a lot of new things is keep coming up, right?
that's right. So
And
if
do you
it's
know-
one of those approvals impact it all too, right? And none of those approvals require, you had the same posture. No VMT analysis was done for those.
So you are telling that for 20 years, we need to have a crystal ball and figure out how the transportation evolves. Based on that, we need to come out with an analysis and show you how. Is that the expectation?
You need to do your best.
Okay, so that's the reason I'm asking. So now the next question is, you know that this is for the master plan approval doesn't mean that every specific program that is or project that comes up, there will be
That's
Start going to
not
have-
clear on any of the conditions approval, none of that. There isn't clear check-ins, clear performance standards, clear enforceable mitigation. There's no accountability from the city to try and manage the VMT problem.
Can I ask staff one question?
Yeah, go ahead.
So just to make sure, we understand that, at least I understand that this is a master plan approval, but then every specific project there will be a review of environmental impact as well as VMT. Is that my thinking is right or?
Yes, so so there are conditions of approval that are in the master plan, development plan, Exhibit A of Attachment B of your staff report. That does identify that so it's under specifically the title of future process. Page 2 of the conditions of approval identify what that future process is. So development plan, architecture review, all will be subject to a subsequent review process. With any time with CEQA, any project that's a discretionary project automatically has an environmental review associated with that. So any development plan application will have an environmental review associated with that.
Thank you.
I would just respectfully, again, NOEs, NODs
Yep.
are filings to contain a legal risk. They are not complete reanalysis and updates of the existing current conditions. So this continued posture with all the approvals that have gone on, relying on decades old, that's a problem, and it's rearing its head finally again.
Okay. My next question is about about post 2023 changes, right? Which specific regulatory or ordinance change after December 2023, do you believe were not adequately addressed?
Sorry, I didn't hear you.
I'll repeat my question, sorry for that. Which, this is regarding post 2023 changes that you raised the concern, right? So which specific regulatory or ordinance changes after December 2023 do you believe were not adequately addressed?
None of them. Zero.
None of
It
them.
wasn't described. Called out specific regulation and response, or regulation, and this is how it's impacted the cumulative or the project-specific analysis.
Okay, you're mentioning about the impacts, right? In that case, how do you see these changes materially affecting environmental impacts under section 15183?
I think I've already answered that question. I told you that those four answers to the four questions, all of them are inadequate.
All four are the impacts
Yeah.
on this one, okay. I have one final question. So on, you talked about, did we touch base about density bonus waivers, right? So you
Yeah.
have a concern on that one. So which specific waiver you believe is further seeker review? You think that we need to do further seeker review on which waiver for bonus density?
The landscaping is obviously laughable. Landscape architects will argue otherwise. Using landscape as a safety and security shield is arguable.
Okay, is
But
there anything else?
I think definitely the design got off. So yeah, the state density bonus is minus the landscaping. All of them minus the landscaping.
Minus landscaping. Those are my questions. I may come back.
Okay.
On the question.
All
Thank
right.
you.
Before I move on down this direction, because you were talking the VMT thing, and we may hear it from the applicant in a moment, but I mean, we've got the entire 176 pages of the traffic operations report by Fur Pierce. And I mean, that's pretty detailed, intersection by intersection, 15-minute increments. I mean, it's a pretty detailed report, but you're saying there is no detail, there's nothing that was done.
No, you didn't hear me correctly.
Okay, clarify, please.
Level of service is no longer a CEQA item.
Yeah.
It's all been shifted to VMT. So, well, yes, the city does both because of course the traffic engineer wants to make sure. But there is no equivalent staff person that's doing the analysis on the VMT memo from Fair and Pierce. You will also note, again, you're referring to something that's more detailed. The VMT memo from Fair and Pierce was like 20 plus pages, significantly less, with 3 note to reviewer warnings on the peculiar determination. I would also suggest to you, and I do in the materials I submitted, First Carbon laid out the expedited review expectations in March before all these subsequent regulatory changes, before the state density bonus waivers. And so it basically tied Fair and Pierce's hands to do what the normal analytic process is. They were put in a box and they did their best, and still it wasn't enough.
Okay, all right, thank you. All right, let me keep coming down this way. Councilmember Adler.
Thank you, Mayor. I know you did a lot of work on this and a lot of analysis. As far as SB 330, you refer, I see mostly as it applies to the number of meetings. But there's a lot more to it than that. And it also can kind of be, needs to be read in
Excuse me. I'm not challenging SB 330 and everything related to 330. I'm challenging the CEQA
Right.
analysis.
But there's a lot to that besides the number of meetings. I just wondered if you had any ideas about that, the requirement in 330 about the acceleration of the housing which is the goal of the state, of course. But if you have any thoughts, because you put in so much analysis on a lot of other areas, whether you have any thoughts on that.
Right, I'll backtrack to what I said before. The richness of the inadequacy and basically redeveloping Chevron. That said, it's a dramatic transformation and use. Yes, it helps with housing. Yes, or as proposed right now, it helps with housing. I'm not here to say whether housing is good or bad. I will say that housing changes the traffic and VMT dynamic in and around, especially where I live, in and around downtown. And when those impacts, when the city has thumbed their nose at each and every one of these recent approvals, relying on the previous detailed ER, it's really hard for me to grasp at any straws because the analysis is incomplete.
All right. Well, it's something that we as a council have to look at and when we make decisions.
And this, take this as an opportunity then. Camino Ramon looks like a more tidy Iran. Camino Ramon looks like a more tidy Iran. And there's been no cumulative impact analysis, no cumulative fiscal impact analysis, no absorption rate analysis.
All right. That's all the questions I have. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Let me go to Vice Mayor Rubio.
Thank you for your presentation, first and foremost. I know you put a lot of work and time into that, so I appreciate you doing that. And so I'm going to kind of go one by one on these 4 points that you highlighted just to better understand what it is you're trying to sort of pin down more specifically, okay? So on the first question that you posed here, whether there are environmental effects peculiar to the project or parcel. Based on what the staff reviews whatever is given to them, that is past everybody at various levels within our staff, those things are reviewed to identify if anything
No,
peculiar.
no, that's why Mary Bean stood up here. That's why Cindy didn't answer.
When those studies are done, the staff has to review those things. Okay, they don't just accept them.
I would argue though, just like I did in the rebuttal, staff directs you to the entire record, not an excerpt, not a page, not 3 pages. They just said, go fish.
Okay, so there were no peculiar environmental effects identified within the project or the parcel. That was the finding. So my question to you.
No, that
there
was
was?
the setup. That was the setup in the CEQA approach. Again, if you look at the analytic sort of structure, and common sense tells you you have a project, you collect data, you analyze that data, You then compare that analyzed data to the CEQA guidelines, ideally city-specific CEQA guidelines. And then further, you analyze not just the CEQA guidelines, but the CEQA thresholds. And similar to the guidelines, the more local and specific, the better the conclusions should be. And with better conclusions, just like I explained to Mr. Verose, those better conclusions inform how you best mitigate.
So
Excuse me, Mr. Mayor, could you ask the speaker to please wait until the entire question has been asked for the benefit of the record? That way we can make sure that the record is more cleanly recorded. Thank you.
Okay, so noted. Do you acknowledge that? Please wait until.
I can,
question.
but I mean, we're
Please wait
we're
until.
reading the record over and over and over and over again.
Right, but for the record, we need to hear the question
Okay.
fully. Thank you.
So first and foremost, there's two important bills that passed last year, that were enacted last year, AB 130 and SB 131, that provided a lot of streamlining as it pertains to, excuse me, I'm not finished.
I didn't say anything.
I'm not finished. I'm telling you what the law is, and it's not an opinion. It's not up for debate at all. So the point is that if it's infill urban development, there is streamlining that has been enacted on behalf of CEQA and VMT. So and also when you say city-specific guidelines, we have certain limitations. The things that you are speaking about, CEQA and VMT, there's a lot of state laws that are overriding what we can do locally. So with that said, I have asked specifically if there are peculiar effects. Was there anywhere that you identified in any report that there was what is the hazard, even if you didn't see it? In your perception, what do you think is the possible hazard that could be existing there?
It's not about hazard.
You're saying here whether there are environmental effects peculiar to the project or the parcel. Whether the second question, whether there are effects not previously analyzed as significant to the prior EIR. You would only engage in this if for some reason you believed there was some newfound potential risk that would require a new evaluation, so a new EIR. So I'm asking, could you please define what is that concern? What do you think has presented itself since then?
Okay, first, your other laws, none of those exemptions were
Even with
play here.
SB 330,
None of
they
these
were still in
exemptions are
place,
play here.
just so
They're
you know.
not looking for findings under those exemptions.
Even for SB 330, they were already streamlined
Nope.
density bonus laws that they qualify for. So, but
Not-
please,
not related to
my
CEQA.
question, can you answer my question? What specifically, because you're asking in two of these questions that your concern is an environmental issue, that this happened in December of 2023, that we need to do it all over again because something could have arisen since then. So my concern, I'm trying to address your concern. What I need from you is to identify what do you think is a new potential hazard that may have arisen since then?
Again, it's not a hazard, it's a potential environmental impact.
Exactly. Okay.
That said, again, the analytical sort of framework you're projecting is incorrect. You have to answer the 4 questions first before you get to the conclusion. That's what I'm suggesting, that you have to answer those 4 questions first, that you should have done the detailed analysis to make and justify those findings to those 4 questions. And then, and only then, can you assert the 1513 exemption, not the other way around, bottom up.
Okay,
So again, I'm going to repeat myself. If we want to discuss peculiar, we can. There is obviously Black's Law Dictionary that can define it for you. But I've said complete transformation. That is peculiar, as well as VMT, because of the statement of overriding considerations found in the 2024, in the General Plan 2040 EIR. All the other potential environmental impacts connected to VMT. I've listed those out bunches of times, but it's GHG, it's circulation, and okay, safety, if you want to call it safety hazards, we can do that. So again, it's bottom up, it's not top down. You have to answer each of those, and you have to look at it holistically, not just since December 2023, because there's Iran out on Camino Ramon.
so I would like to, just for the sake of the sensitivity of our other community members right now and what's going on at a larger scale, I would prefer if we just keep the word Iran out of this, if we can, okay? The only thing I am going to say is, you're saying where there are potentially significant off-site or cumulative impacts not previously discussed in the prior EIR. It is explained very clearly that these EIR reports and VMTs will be happening in a phased manner. It's not, we're not doing it one time for 20 years. That's not how it's happening. Are you aware of that?
How, to Rose's point here, how can you model 20 years out?
Exactly, you can't. So they are already planning, it's part of the project approval that this will be done in a phased manner. There will be updated EIRs and VMTs. So are you aware of that?
That structure, that whole subsequent approval structure has not been defined in much detail, if at all.
What's missing in the details?
Again, you're asking me to talk mitigation when I haven't. The VMT analysis is screening the first level. And in that screening, Fair and Peers pointed that 3 times. It said, I hear we're going under no peculiar impacts, but I'm not really sure about that. So I'm going to do my best, and I'm going to put in a note to reviewer in 3 separate places.
Okay, so my question was specifically, are you aware that there will be phased, revised, updated EIRs and VMTs?
There's no guarantee in that.
That's a condition of the approval.
But as I've established, and giving your expedited streamlining posture that's inadequate, that relies on NODs and NOEs rather than full-blown master plan EIRs, full-blown specific project environmental review analysis documents, whatever they may be.
So
So again, given your posture to sort of thumb your nose at current and cumulative, I don't have any faith that those, and there's nothing in the documents that say at this time, X, Y, Z, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 will happen. Other than the traffic impact operations impact, which again, details striping and what have you. And still, it's not enough because we've expanded Bollinger to its limits. So
I believe there was some language as to when they would do those things in terms of update those, the VMT and the EIRs, in terms of projects that would be completed and when they would be done in phases. So I would highly advise you to look at that again. The other thing is whether substantial new information shows that previously identified significant effects will be more severe than described in the prior EIR. Again, this kind of all four of these statements are really one question. It's one question as saying, I don't trust the EIR, I don't trust the VMT, and unfortunately, unless there's an actual crystallized reason, like you can point to something was overlooked that's critical. Now, it's saying just it's not good enough for me is not going, even if we just said, okay, it's not good enough for you, and we go along with that, in a court of law, that will not hold water. It just won't.
that's in essence what staff has done though. Respectfully, in my follow-up details, all of that is there for VMT. All of it is there. I was restrained to 15 minutes here. I had to present summaries relative to your overstatement relative to the traffic. Again, you're separating traffic, which is not a CEQA topic. That is the lane changes and striping. VMT is different.
Well, they're somewhat related in the sense if you're
They can be,
concerned
you're right.
of greenhouse
It
gas
can help
emissions-
flow and.
Excuse me,
One at a
I'm
time,
speaking.
one at a time, please.
And so they can be related in terms of greenhouse gas emissions. And just in case as a piece of information, all of our transportation services, I will be done in 1 second. All of our transportation services do data analysis of different communities to be able to identify where are high transit need areas. So even as we talk about the concern that you were sharing earlier about whether will there be enough transportation available to be responsive to these things, those are in terms of people getting around. You're talking about vehicle miles traveled, the impacts on traffic, all those things. There are many moving parts, is what I'm saying. It's not just me getting in my car. Do I want to ride my bike? Do I want to walk? Ideally, though, the way that this has been designed is to encourage people to walk and bike. It's right across from a major shopping center. I can tell you when I was in my 20s, I gladly walked over a mile just to get a coffee. It was fun for me. This is what people do when they're young. When they're young, they want a destination to go and walk to. They're with their friends, they have conversations, they want somewhere to go. So it actually is, there's a reason the general plan focused on creating more urbanized, higher density near the downtown core. And it's multifaceted, and it actually, there's a lot of research on this that would show that, the behavior in terms of what some of the concerns that you're talking about, if you're talking about environmental concerns, higher density, like apartment housing, is actually really good. It saves on water. It saves on things like water. So when you're actually building closer to, like I said earlier, closer to areas where people can shop and do their everyday activities, you encourage people to walk, to bike, to get there in other ways other than getting in their car. And so we can't force people to do anything, but we certainly can encourage people to do things. And historically, that is what we've seen.
Respectfully, Bollinger is 10 lanes wide. Have you been on the south sidewalk? As a little tyke, all I did was ride my bike from behind Bollinger School to Central Park to play tennis with my buddy that lived across. 10 lanes now, skinny sidewalk. Have you tried to use the Bollinger Canyon Iron Horse Trail overcrossing? Have you tried to circulate around City Hall and the marketplace? I would beg you, those that are familiar, since they were a little tyke about doing this, I am more compelled to jaywalk across the 10 than go all the way back to the landings of the Iron Horse Trail. So there's a certain disconnect between what you're saying of encouraging and what policies are in the general plan and what it actually is on the ground.
I'm
And
sorry.
that's the problem in part.
Are you saying that we don't have an overpass or in that we don't have stoplights?
I'm
'Cause people
saying
can't
the
cross the street.
overcrossing is severely inconvenient to those circulating around the civic area and marketplace.
Okay.
Okay, so that's an opinion, but the reality, it's better, it's actually, that overpass actually got a recognition. I'm talking. It got actually recognized through the Cal Cities, okay, for the work, the impact that it had on the community, positive impact.
Not
So now,
respectfully,
now,
respectfully,
you can talk,
that
I can't.
that was all
I can't.
money-based and on design. It was nothing about usability. Nothing about usability. It was all on design, who was ushered by CCTA.
Thank you, Brian. All right, you have any other questions?
I can't ask any questions because I keep getting interrupted, so I will just
Okay.
hold off.
All right, and I'm going to go back to the phasing issue that Cindy E brought up just I don't know, 20 minutes ago or so, but she was talking about future processes and the conditions of approval. Item 5, development plan and architectural review applications are required for each building or phase of the Orchards Master Plan. Those developments will be subject to the standard staff review process, including development review by city departments, outside agencies, and utilities. Each building or phase will be subject to review in accordance with zoning ordinance section D 622 architectural review and D 623 development plans. Condition of approval 6 was each future development plan or architecture review approval shall be subject to its own project specific conditions of approval based on the specifics of the design proposal and consistent with these master plan conditions of approval. In addition, each development plan and architectural review will require verification of service capacity from local utilities, water, sewer, et cetera. I'll just, one more condition of approval because there's 100 some odd. Condition of approval 11, all general plan 2040 FEIR mitigation measures identified in the Orchards Project CEQA Guidelines, section 15-183 consistency checklist, exhibit C shall be implemented as appropriate and are incorporated by reference as conditions of approval. I'm just stating that to clarify the location of what Ms. Yee said earlier.
Understood, but all that subsequent stuff, there was no EIR, no environmental review, no VMT, no GHG, none of any of that.
And that-
None of any of that. And I've already explained that the VMT mitigation for TDM is uncertain, and relies mainly on Contra Costa Transportation Authority recommendations, not city-specific and not project-specific.
All right, thank you. Let me come back down this direction. Do we have any follow-up?
Yeah, I just have one follow-up. Mr. Swanson, when did you provide the subsequent material? The subsequent material that was handed out to us, when did you provide that?
Most of it, other than the response to the staff report, was provided on Friday. The questions and the response to the staff report and the slide deck were all new today.
Okay, so what I think my colleagues were trying to understand is and it's not what you know, it's what you could prove. Is there anything you could point in the material here? Because I've been looking very hard to give you benefit of the doubt to find anything. Like, for example, you bring up VMT. I'm trying to find any argument, because that seems to be your anchor point in this appeal, is the VMT. So I'm trying to find if there's any new or project-specific traffic or VMT impact that exists that was not already identified in the general plan EIR. And I haven't seen anything. I haven't seen anything from you. Can you provide something for me? Is there anything you could point me out to?
No, my approach is that was already red flagged.
This is your appeal,
Heavily.
Swanson.
Statements of overriding considerations. And so that should have been a warning that should have informed the bottom-up analysis that needed to be done. I've provided specific VMT issues in my materials.
Conjecture.
No, just like conjecture and conclusatory statements that that have 3 warnings from the technical specialist.
Mr. Swanson, this is your appeal. Do you have anything at all, any piece of evidence besides just what may happen? I'm just curious, is there anything you could point to?
Nothing has been adequate. I don't have those answers because nothing has been adequate.
So what are you appealing? What's your appeal? What's your appeal?
That the use of the 515.
Hold on. We have staff reviewing the information. We have staff writing reports. We have a 5-person planning commission. Let me finish. We have a 5-person planning commission reviewing information. We have an entire council reviewing information. We have a dozen public hearings and meetings, and now we have this appeal. You saying that we don't understand, don't know how to read staff reports, don't know how to analyze ourselves? Is that what you're telling us? This is your appeal.
Have you ever been trained in CEQA in a public meeting?
Mr. Swanson, this is your appeal.
And there should have been a staff report that excerpted the responses to my specific issues. Instead, the whole file was thrown at each and every one of you.
Wait, say that again. What? I'm sorry. I missed that. What was your point?
The reply from staff to my specific issues not once exerted any of the analysis conclusions in the actual document.
Could I,
Not once.
Vice Mayor, can I see that packet? The book that you have there? No, the thick one of the plans and everything else. Yeah, can I see that?
Yes.
Sure. Hand that to me, Mayor, please. I'm curious. Mr. Swanson. This.
That
Let me finish. Let me finish. This was filed by the applicant. This too was filed by the applicant. The information provided in these packets, along with this stack of paper that's been provided to the city, all of it which has to follow CEQA analysis, all of which has to follow the EIR, you telling me that the tens of thousands of dollars and the hours they put in to make the application, we're supposed to just sit here and just take your word?
No,
Just
no,
conjecture
I would
that
ask
nothing
you
was done
respectfully
appropriately?
for the excerpts. I would ask you.
Mr. Swanson.
No, in the staff.
Mr.
report.
Swanson,
In the staff report, the analysis in the staff report.
thank
The
you.
analysis that
Thank you.
that the consultant came to the conclusion from.
Thank you.
It's not fair.
Thank you, Mr. Swanson.
Okay, any other further?
Volume doesn't mean proper, adequate conclusions. Volume doesn't mean that.
Yeah, you're certainly right.
That's right.
All right,
That's
thank,
right.
thank you. Let's reel it back in a little bit and let me, Councilmember Veros, any final follow-ups?
No, I don't have any.
Okay.
I'm good. Thank you.
Anything down at this end?
Yeah.
Okay, all right. Thank you, Mr. Swanson. We're going to move on now to the applicant. And let's hear from, is this going to be Stephanie Hill?
Just one moment, please. I'm sorry.
Good evening, Mayor Armstrong and City Council members. On behalf of Sunset Development, I'm Stephanie Hill. We appreciate the opportunity to present Orchards this evening. I'll focus mostly on the vision, evolution, and key components of the Orchards community. Some of this material overlaps with what you've seen in the prior presentations. Before focusing on Orchards, I'd like to briefly frame the broader vision for Bishop Ranch. Over the next 20 years, our residential plan will transform Bishop Ranch into a suburban downtown that complements the existing office and retail uses and creates a cohesive mixed-use community. Across Bishop Ranch, this vision includes 4 office districts: Orchards, Sycamore, Shepherd's Glen, and Lakeside. City Walk established the first residential framework with approximately 4,500 homes, including Belmont Village and Avalon Bay. Summerhill, Trumark, and KB Homes are the second residential framework within the DMU North District. Tonight, we are focused on the 92-acre Orchard site, where we have worked closely with staff and the community over the past 3 years to develop the plans. Because Chevron Park is currently closed to the public, we've included site photos to provide context for the existing conditions. Today, the site includes 14 office buildings totaling 1.4 million square feet of office, surrounded by tree-lined parking lots and a perimeter greenway. As staff noted, the city's 2040 general plan update established policy guidance for the future redevelopment of the site based on a public process throughout 2023. Our proposal is directly aligned with that vision and is consistent with the general plan. When Sunset acquired the property in 2022, the Planning Commission encouraged an incremental and collaborative process. Over the following 2 years, we engaged in an ongoing dialogue with the Planning Commission, City Council, Inverness Park residents, and the broader community, which significantly shaped the plan before you this evening. This slide shows the site plan evolution over that 2-year period. We began with core elements central to the design, keeping the existing Chevron Drive, preserving the existing heritage oak trees, including a central park, and a perimeter greenway with connections to the Iron Horse Trail. From there, we studied 3 density scenarios ranging from 2,000 to 2,900 homes. Each scenario generally placed taller buildings along Bollinger Canyon Road, transitioning to lower scale homes adjacent to Inverness Park, with retail located in the northeast corner. We received clear feedback from the community and from the public officials in terms of supporting residential to meet the housing needs from the state, thoughtfully transitioning to Inverness Park, the existing neighborhood to the south, and strengthening retail activation. That input led directly to the 2,500 home concept that became the submitted application. This is the site plan that was submitted as the application. For orientation, Bollinger Canyon is to the north, Inverness Park is to the south, 680 is to the west, and Bishop Branch office uses are to the east. As previously mentioned, Orchards is organized into 3 districts: mixed use, multifamily, and the neighborhood. This creates thoughtful scale with taller buildings along Bollinger in the mixed use and multifamily districts, and transitioning to lower scale homes in the neighborhood district adjacent to Inverness Park. In total, there are 2,510 homes incorporated into Orchards. This includes 619 homes in the mixed use district above 125,000 square feet of ground floor retail, 1,465 homes within the multifamily district, and 368 homes within the neighborhood district, plus optional accessory dwelling units that may be built. This balanced mix allows us to serve a broad range of household types. Because the project will be built over many years, these renderings are intended to illustrate the scale and character of the mixed-use and multifamily districts rather than final architecture. Each future phase will return for city review. Retail has been a central focus throughout the design process. Concentrating retail together creates foot traffic, supports cross-shopping, and establishes a destination. The proposed program is intended to be neighborhood serving, with approximately half of the space dedicated to food and beverage uses and the balance to goods and services. Spaces range from 1,000 to 5,000 square feet, with flexibility for a small grocer of approximately 20,000 square feet along Bollinger Canyon. Within the neighborhood district, 4 home types create variety while maintaining a cohesive design language through similar architecture and shared color schemes. This mix allows for the first phase to truly feel like a neighborhood as it's developed. Open space is one of the defining features of Orchards. This includes the perimeter greenway, the heritage oak tree parks along the greenway, a 2.5-acre standard park, paseos and courtyards, and the internal multi-use pathways. These spaces connect to the entire community and provide recreation, gathering, and walkability within the community. In addition, connectivity beyond the site is equally important. This slide highlights the connections to Heritage Park, the Iron Horse Trail, the library, and adjacent uses. These links help to integrate the site into the broader community. Over the past year, we've had extensive discussions about the considerations and differences between for sale and rental affordable housing. Through those discussions, we heard that there is significant value in delivering additional affordable homes through a rental execution, particularly because it allows for both a greater number of homes and a deeper level of affordability. This approach supports the city in meeting its RHNA obligations and is what allows us to exceed the 15% affordable housing requirement that the city has. Over more than 16% of the homes at Orchards will be affordable, including over 6% dedicated to very low-income households. This will be delivered through 2 different types of affordable housing: integrated affordable housing within the multifamily mixed-use districts, and a dedicated affordable community by Eden Housing serving the neighborhood district. Eden Housing's development increases the neighborhood district's affordable commitment by 44 homes, an 80% increase over the city's requirement. In addition, we are proposing condominium developments within the multifamily district, which will create on-site for sale affordable homes as part of the overall housing mix. As has been mentioned throughout this evening's presentations, Orchards is anticipated to be delivered over approximately 20 years. This slide outlines one potential phasing framework, beginning with the demolition and infrastructure of the existing office campus, followed by the neighborhood district and Eden, the mixed-use district to follow, and later the multifamily phases. This process is very similar to what we're seeing with City Walk, which was the first residential implementation within Bishop Branch, where we have phased deliveries. Belmont Village has been completed. Heritage Park is under construction and opening within the next 30 days. And we have Avalon Bay under construction. Each phase with City Walk, and similar to what we'll see with Orchards, returns for city review. Everything comes in front of the Planning Commission, the Architectural Review Board. There's opportunity to review the architecture, to review and make sure that everything is consistent with the overall plan. As discussed, the first phase is anticipated to include demolition of existing buildings and construction of the Orchards neighborhood and Eden's community. The Bollinger frontage and parking area are proposed to remain temporarily in place to support interim community programming such as pop-up events and seasonal activities. As part of the application materials, we advanced the design of the Orchards neighborhood to include a vesting tentative parcel map and architecture for the 368 homes. Orchards Neighborhood District includes a variety of homes, townhomes, row homes, detached homes, and courts. In addition to housing, it includes the Heritage Oak Tree Parks and the perimeter greenway along Inverness Park. Because this community will be delivered over time, the application also includes design guidelines like City Walk. These establish the principles for architecture, open space, and streetscape to ensure long-term consistency and quality. In closing, Orchards represents the next chapter in the evolution of Bishop Branch and the city's vision for a vibrant downtown San Ramon. At its core, Orchards is an infill mixed-use development that transforms a private office campus into a connected community. It creates housing opportunities across a broad range of life stages and income levels, while strengthening the relationship between housing, jobs, retail, and open space. It reflects years of collaboration with staff, the Planning Commission, City Council, and nearby residents. It is consistent with the 2040 General Plan Update and associated CEQA analysis. Orchards will help shape a vibrant and enduring community for San Ramon for generations. I'm joined this evening by Andy Kaczynski from Fair and Peers, as well as Dixie Baus from Eden Housing, and we're available to answer any questions you may have. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Do we have questions for the applicant? Councilmember Burrows.
Yeah, thanks, Stephanie, for presenting. So regarding the affordability housing that you mentioned. So you mentioned there will be for sale as well as for rental, right? Could you please give me share with us the numbers on the for sale versus, okay, there it is. Okay, so neighborhood affordable housing. So for sale versus rental.
So the Orchards Neighborhood District, the first phase includes 368 for sale homes. And then we've also factored in 300 condominium for sale homes within the multifamily district. And so that's what's generating the moderate income homes within that district, is the creation of the condominium for sale. So that's generally in a 4 to 7 story building, and you can buy your unit as opposed to rent your unit.
Okay, so sorry, I missed the number. So what is the total? 368?
So we have 368 for sale homes within the neighborhood district. That excludes the accessory dwelling units, which are optional. And then within the multifamily district, which is in the northwest quadrant of Orchards, we've planned for 300 for sale condominiums, which contributes to the moderate income homes that you're seeing on this table.
So you said 300 moderate, but I don't see 300 there. That's why I'm a little confused.
It's blended within the 1,106. So there's 1,365 homes in the multifamily district outside of Eden's community that they're developing. And of that 1,365 homes, there are some condominium units. So it's a mix of rental apartments and then also for sale condominiums within that 1,365. And then the 368 for the neighborhood, that is for sale. The mixed use district, the 619, we anticipate that that's a rental product where we have ground floor retail with rental apartments on top. And then we have the neighborhood affordable housing site, which Eden is developing, which would be a rental community.
Okay, and all the Eden development is going to be the affordable housing, right?
Yes, that is the affordable housing. That's 99 units of below market rate. And then we have one manager's unit. There's also a childcare center, and we'll actually be at Architectural Review Board on Thursday for anyone who's interested in getting into the design of that one.
Sounds good. And for our staff, the question is how critical is this or the importance of this overall affordable housing that helps us with the RENA? Do we have some numbers that can guide us or suggest us that of how we are going to do it? Or are we going to reach our goals for our 2040 general plan?
So the best way for me to answer this question is that any unit, whether it's market rate or affordable, is going to contribute to the city's regional housing needs allocation. Our regional housing needs allocation is assigned to us every 8 years. And so we're currently in one cycle of RENA. Over the course of this project, it will span multiple RENA cycles. And so this project will help us achieve our RENA not just through 2031, but then in the next phase that we anticipate in the next following 8 years, we'll get a new assignment of RENA allocation, and it will also help to achieve the goals that are required of the city then.
Sounds good. So thanks for that answer. Now let's go to the timeline that you showed, right? So the first one is going to be neighborhood affordable. After that, 12 years mixed use. Okay, so there is always a question comes up about school district water. I'm sure, I hope you already took care of all those aspects, but I just want to make sure our community members hear from you. What kind of analysis is done on the school side for the registration for the kids as well as for the water?
So as it relates to the school district, there are adopted fees for new development. So with every new development, we are making contributions or paying impact fees to the school district, which they are then responsible for allocating those funds. I will say the school district and I are in regular communication with the development, not only at Orchards, but also elsewhere in Bishop Ranch, so that they can understand what timelines look like for new children coming into the schools. So school district is aware they do receive these application materials when we submit them to the city, and ultimately will pay fees to the school district, which they are then responsible for allocating to ensure that there's appropriate school facilities for children that are added within these new residential developments. I'll pause there and then I can respond to water if there's a follow-up on school. Okay.
I don't have any follow-up on.
So with water, we did do analysis. CBG is our civil engineer. They're not here this evening, but they did do evaluation over what the water demand is as part of this development, and then also a water supply analysis. Given that this is an infill development, the office campus with the 1.4 million square feet did use water previously. And it was built in the 1980s. And although it has had improvements over time, it doesn't have the most efficient plumbing systems given the age of the building. And so when you look at changes to plumbing and building code and the requirements for low flow fixtures and whatnot, there is a general balancing of water demands for this development versus what's already in place. Obviously, East Bay Mud manages their water, and if this is built over a 20-year period, that's something that they continue to navigate as we have new applications come in for individual developments.
Sounds good. Now, you mentioned that was a community output and you took their feedback. Could you please highlight few things or any point that you can share with us? What was their input and how you use that in your plan?
So we had extensive meetings. There were 10 meetings from the Givens slide in January 2023 until the application that was submitted in November of 2024. And 7 of those meetings were with the Planning Commission and City Council and EDAC and the Economic Advisory and Housing. And so we talked a lot about how do we think about the layout for this space. And if you look at the top 4 slides, this is where we started. And the feedback we received from the community was to shift the park so that it was closer to the retail. And so you'll see in that final April 2023 that the park has shifted. So there's no longer a band of pink between the retail and the park. So we shifted that park so it's closer to the retail. There's a lot of focus on having the park and the retail work together so that they really seam together, and you can have people who perhaps do some pop-ups in the park that are related to retailers. So if you have a fitness store and they decide to do Saturday yoga in the park, they're next to each other, and so that feeds really well together. One of the things that we really heard from the Inverness Park residents who are just to the south of Orchards was they didn't want to have tall buildings directly along that property line. And so if you look at the low density, the medium density, and the high density, we really focused on making sure that those taller buildings were closer to Bollinger Canyon rather than having them adjacent to the property line. So you'll see that really that yellow keeps kind of shifting further north to show that we have those 2-story homes that are next to that property line rather than having 5 to 7-story homes that are right along there. The perimeter greenway was something that was really important as well. So it creates a landscaped buffer between the residents and the new residents within Orchards. And so that's a minimum of 60 feet wide, average of 75 feet wide. That's along that back property line to really create some privacy between the new residents and the existing residents. There's also a lot of focus within the Architectural Review Board, and I'm going to shift slides, about connectivity and the opportunity to meander within the site. And so within the site, we do have some widened sidewalks. We have a widened sidewalk that goes north-south along Sunset Drive, and so that's 12 feet wide, so you can have your bicycles and your kids and have multiple people who are shoulder to shoulder as they're going through. Then we also added in a wider pathway east-west connecting the Heritage Oak Tree Park through and then offering a connection point to Iron Horse Trail. So really looked at those connectivity. We added in some nodes within the row homes to create opportunities for pedestrians to take a more circuitous route throughout the site plan.
Great. Thank you. Thanks for taking our community input and putting that in your plan. Appreciate that. Now, my final question is, this is like 20 years plus. It can be plus years, right? So I want staff to just give us a walkthrough the process, how it goes phase by phase, like briefly, like just so that we understand, like, or we all understand that there are gates every time. It's not like blanket approval, so that folks who are listening can understand that.
So I'm going to use the phasing scenario slide just to help walk through how that works. So going into where it says year 7, Orchards Neighborhood Affordable Community Perimeter Greenway. As you saw in your packet, the Orchards Neighborhood District is requesting entitlement level approval, which means that they've submitted a vesting tentative map. That map can then be used to subdivide the parcels to then be able to sell individual house units to people. So an entitlement level approval is being requested for the neighborhoods district. That doesn't exist for the multifamily or the mixed-use district. So each future project will have its own map and identify architecture, design, landscaping, et cetera. Similar to that large packet of project plans that's attached to your staff report. The Orchards affordable development, that 100-unit development we've been referring to this evening, they have submitted a development plan level application. So similar to the neighborhoods district, that project will have architecture review, which is scheduled for this Thursday. Then it has previously filed a preliminary housing development application that went to the Planning Commission for review prior to it being deemed complete. We are going to anticipate that once architecture review has been completed, once environmental review has been completed, we then move forward to Planning Commission for their review of the 100-unit Orchards affordable project. That will have conditions of approval, and that guidance has been provided to us in that 20-year master plan conditions of approval that's attached to the resolution. That we will use that document to evaluate and identify conditions that will go specifically towards Orchards development of their affordable building. That type of review is going to then repeat for each phase subsequent to this master plan approval. So if we receive direction for master plan approval, then those conditions of approval that have been drafted will then become the basis for how we evaluate all future entitlements that are requested in Orchards. And it will, again, follow that same pattern of entitlement level analysis. We do a development review committee made up of internal staff members, outside agencies. They all get a referral every time we get a development plan application. We do an analysis for environmental review, and it has conditions of approval then adopted if it meets the obligations of the master plan. So that will continue as you get into this year 12, year 15, year 20. That same level of entitlement review will occur for all future phases.
That's great. Thanks, Cindy. Sorry, I have one more final generic question for Stephanie. So one of the council focus when we were working on this or listening on workshops and the various other idea was that we want to bring young adults back to our community. So as you know, like our school district, our enrollments are dropping down big time, and we don't want to end up into a city where we don't have any young adults, right? So we definitely want to bring them back. It's a general question. So what is your confidence with this program or with this all your projects? Do you have confidence that we can bring back young adults?
Of course. So I think a big piece of what we're looking at, and I'm going to point to Avalon Bay in City Walk just as an example, where that is an apartment building, a market rate apartment building that a recent one has not been built in the city for over 20, if not 30 years. And that apartment community provides a different type of housing option. Yes, it has studios, but it also has 1 bedrooms and 2 bedrooms and 3 bedrooms. And for younger people who have just graduated from college or trade school or are working their first job as an adult, that's a really great opportunity to have housing for people who can't afford homeownership within the city of San Ramon. And so it's creating that diversity of housing, which is really important. If we look to Eden's development, Camino Ramon, which is 2453, they submitted their building permits yesterday. That provides another different option of housing. And that is affordable housing for 30% to 80% area median income. And so you're looking at households who are earning $30,000 to $80,000. They can now afford to live within San Ramon. And so creating those lower price points for people to be able to come into the city while they may not be buying a home or able to buy a market rate home, they do have access to the city. And by giving access to the city, you have city center and you have retail and you have all these different pieces, and they start really working together where the housing supports the retail, the office supports the housing. And so when all three of those are working together, we create a really vibrant ecosystem for downtown San Ramon.
Sounds good. I said it was the last question, but when you mentioned about the retail, so I don't consider city center as a regular retail, right? So it's more like lifestyle, but I want to understand what kind of retail we are looking for. Is it going to be affordable retail, like something like Trader Joe or something like that? Or what kind of retail it is going to be?
So we have heard very clearly that there's a demand and a desire for a different type of retail in downtown San Ramon. And the retail that's being built as part of Orchards is distinct from City Center. There's not, upper deck rooftop parking. We have a ground floor commercial space. And in prior meetings, I've talked about Santana Row in San Jose, where you have the ground floor retail, which is really focused towards residents, and then you have residential units on top. And Jeff Dodd was unable to join this evening, but he's our retail expert. And so when he thinks about how do we occupy and tenancy that space, it's really a mix of much smaller footprints. So we're looking at, coffee shops, we're looking at bakeries, we've talked about a cheesemonger. So it's neighborhood serving, but we're also looking at we've also heard from former Commissioner Wallace, he really wants to have an Irish pub. So it's that mix of breweries and restaurants, some of that neighborhood serving. We're looking at a small grocer, so you can grab that gallon of milk, you can grab bread, you can grab some of those things that you may not have in your kitchen because you want to make something for dinner. And so we're looking at what's the right blend of food, just kind of general amenities, and then also looking at some goods and services. But we are looking that it will be distinct as opposed to competing with City Center.
Sounds good. Thanks. That's
Okay.
all my question.
Maybe back over here to the right, Councilmember Schweinert.
Thank you, Stephanie. Quick question. There was a concern brought up by a resident. It was submitted via email regarding an amphitheater. I'm looking at the map. If there's an amphitheater, is there an amphitheater?
There is not an amphitheater proposed within the Orchards neighborhood. There is an approved amphitheater within the City Walk 4,500 unit plan that was approved in 2020.
Oh, I see. Okay.
And that amphitheater currently is located on the lake. There is some discussion about relocating that amphitheater. That would all happen as separate applications, but that's completely independent of the Orchard site plan that you're seeing this evening.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, Mayor.
Okay, all right, come down here to Councilmember Adler.
Yeah, I was going to ask the retail question that's already been asked, but as far as the people that are going to be living at Orchards, of course, it'd be convenient if they had all their needs very close by, but across the street where we have Target and everything, are they going to expand that area and have more shops over there? Because I'm sure there must be computer models of like how many more stores are we going to need to accommodate this new, over 20 years? How many more stores are we going to need? And do we have the space for that? Have you thought about those issues? And
I would say conceptually, we've thought about the existing retail centers. And if we look at the retail within Orchards, we still need to build that. And we currently have 1,000 homes that are currently under construction within Bishop Ranch between the communities in DMU North with Summerhill, KB, and Truemark, and with Avalon Bay being under construction. And so we think about where do those residents go for retail? And we expect that they're going to the shops at Bishop Ranch, they're going to the marketplace, they're going to Crow Canyon Commons, and really think that there will be an impact to those shopping centers with those new residences. In terms of how many people we need for this particular retailer, everyone has their own kind of calculus on how many beds do we need to support a shop of this size. And so that's going to vary from retailer to retailer. But our expectation is that with some of this near-term residential coming online, that we'll start to see increased demand within the existing shopping centers before this commercial is built as part of the Orchards development.
And looking at all the development going on, I mean, you can just drive around and see all the former offices being torn down. Do we feel like we're going to have the space within San Ramon for these retail stores so that people don't have to drive to Dublin or Danville? Do you think we're going to have enough space for retail here to accommodate all the building we have going on? I mean, I know it's a big question, but it'd be nice if they didn't have to drive too far, you know?
And that's our intention. And when I showed the connectivity slide, we really looked at, how are people walking through and really transporting within Bishop Ranch. And there are some things which you will absolutely buy when you are walking or you're on a bicycle. There are other things that you will not buy when you're walking. Like you're not going to buy a big screen TV when you are walking around, kind of going on Iron Horse Trail. And so we're absolutely trying to figure out the right mix. In earlier presentations, we've talked about 1 million square feet of commercial and retail within the general vicinity of Bishop Ranch, which feels like a good amount of square footage when we look at 8,000 homes over the total build out.
Okay. I appreciate that. Thank you.
Okay, we go down to Vice Mayor Rubio. Do you have any appeal-related questions for the applicant?
I'm sorry. Do you want me to ask the questions now?
Do you have any questions for the applicant that
Oh,
are
yes,
appeal-related?
yes. Okay, so, well, the first question I was just curious, and this might be more directed at staff, is I know it was asked, my understanding is that is there a number, do we have more or less a number on how many very low, and moderate units we were assigned during this RHNA cycle? I know we have 5,111 units net, but of that, what falls under that category? I recall something to the effect of, just over 60%.
61%.
Is that correct? Okay, so it's quite substantial, and it's a huge lift. And everybody knows that affordable housing is one of the most expensive developments to fund and be able to come up with. So this initiative is helping us tremendously to close that gap, to meet that need that we are required by law, not choice. Right now, as it stands, we are to have to meet those requirements. Secondly, I think there's sometimes we have to be careful, I think, when I think people maybe confounding certain things. When people who need affordable housing, there's a lot of parents and families that would be utilizing that opportunity. And they have we have a DVC college here. We just secured with that affordable housing. Thank you, Eden Housing, for securing free childcare. Free childcare became universal in the state of New Mexico. And that one action alone brought 120,000 people in that state above the poverty line. That's not an opinion again. That's the impact that it has in lifting people up. And so I think people, as someone that I have explained before in the past, as someone who couldn't get childcare because my daughter had a medical history that prevented her from qualifying for it, it is really essential, an essential link to making sure that people can have advancement and opportunity. And one of the great things that I know that the Eden Housing is doing, in addition to that, is providing educational opportunities in terms of how to create wealth, given their limited income, how to get, apply for work in addition to their education. So this is really a very comprehensive approach. It's not just, hey, we're going to put affordable housing in. Good luck, The other thing is that so some people have also, in addition to the amphitheater question, some people have been concerned about the trees that are being cut. And so I'm wondering if you could explain, please, what's actually happening with those trees, and will those trees be replaced in different areas?
So great question. With all of the applications that are happening within Bishop Ranch, we do have a tree removal permit. The city has a ordinance that talks about which trees can be removed, which trees cannot be removed, and if you remove a protected tree, what you need to do in terms of planting a new tree. And so with all of the developments, we have extensive landscape plans that go through what are existing trees that we can preserve and what are new trees that are being planted. Specifically within the Orchards development, we have heritage oak trees that were preserved before Chevron built their campus. And so they're really large, magnificent oak trees that we are highlighting with the heritage oak tree parks. And we have a lot of ornamental trees that are within parking lots, which ultimately will need to come down in order for us to develop these new communities and these new projects. And so we're always balancing which trees can we preserve and which trees are healthy. There's also a distinction between happy, healthy trees and trees that are not doing so well. And so we had an arborist evaluate the health of all of the trees within Chevron Park, identify which ones were viable for preservation. And so what we're trying to do is to balance maintaining as many trees as we can along the perimeter greenway that currently exists. And then we will have landscaping plans for everything that's being developed within the community.
And those trees that they're being replaced with, those trees are native trees that are going to be more tolerant in our climate?
So within the design guidelines, we have different kind of plant neighborhoods, if you will. And so there are different species depending on which portion of the site that you're within. What we're trying to balance is having a diversity of plants so that if a particular tree becomes susceptible to something, that we don't lose all of our trees. And so we're really trying to balance what wants to grow here in San Ramon, what is, drought tolerant, and really trying to factor in all of those pieces as we're thinking about our landscape palette.
Okay, great. Well, thank you. Another question I had is, so are you paying fees? Will Sunset be paying fees into the state fund for transit-oriented development rather than performing on-site mitigation or anything like that?
So I don't have the conditions to hand, but I believe there's a condition about a potential future fund that may be created. Cindy's looking at me like I'm making something up.
The conditions of approval does speak to the variety of impact fees that are required for the project. In terms of other opportunities for transit improvements and offsets, We are working through that through the development agreement. And so there will be an opportunity through the development agreement for us to evaluate any additional fees beyond traffic impact fees that would be required as part of the project to incorporate that into the development agreement.
Okay, and because the reason I'm asking is because those two newer laws that are to help streamline development, AB 130 and SB 131, that is one of the languages specified there is to allow developers to pay those fees. So I just wanted to ask if that's something that has been discussed and negotiated at any level.
We'll go with currently under review.
Okay, okay. Then my next question is, are there chargers dispersed, planned to be dispersed throughout that area?
So the California Building Code does have requirements for EV chargers, both in terms of fully installed as well as pre-wired. So there will be EV chargers within the Orchards development.
Okay, and that's great because again, we were discussing earlier, the concerns about, greenhouse gas emissions, environmental impacts, all of that. We want to encourage people. San Ramon has a lot of people in San Ramon do drive EVs, but certainly we want to continue to encourage people to drive clean vehicles, right? So that's why I'm asking that. I appreciate the answer. The other thing is, are there going to be sort of like, not necessarily a library, but similar to a library, study areas, educational resources such as computers or what have you, that will be available to community members in that area in some capacity somewhere?
I don't have programming for every single thing within the Orchards campus. I do know that Dixie's development has that for her residents that will be living within that community. So all of the programming hasn't been finalized, so I can't say specifically if that's available, but building by building, we'll look at amenities and what is available to residents versus the public.
Right, right. And so I'm just thinking, considering, obviously there's going to be increased demand. And I know sometimes like the libraries, for example, can get quite full and it's difficult to find a space for the kids to work or for an adult to work and have access to a computer. So I'm kind of just trying to think ahead. Are these things that you might be considering somehow making that available, or even just for personally, similar to a college campus, we have a quad area somewhere where they can sit and study and have a peace and quiet and be able to focus, right? And it's important for their health, right? So that's what I'm thinking about. And then let's see. Hold on. Okay, so I think I asked all my questions. Thank you so much.
All right, thank you. Any final redirects from council? Okay. All right, thank you,
Thank you.
Stephanie, for your time. And before we go to public hearing, I'd like to take a 7-minute break. It's 9:29 now. We'll be back at 9:36. Thank you. We're going to now move to the portion of the evening where we're going to open up the public hearing. May I get a motion to open the public hearing?
So move.
I second.
Okay, we have a motion by Vice Mayor Rubio, second by Councilmember Veros. And I think we're voting on this
Oh, yeah.
there. And make sure you save it as well. Okay, public hearing is now open. Do we have any speaker cards?
Yes, our first speaker card is from Greg Carr.
Good evening.
Greg Carr, San Moan resident. I thank you for giving a lot of time to both the appellant and the applicant after the 15 minutes. It allowed the audience and you to hear things, see things, disagreements, whatever, just the human aspect of filing an appeal. I also thank Mr. Swanson for taking the time. Mr. Swanson's not some hayseed off the hay wagon like I'd be when it comes to planning. He's a graduate planner, experience, and he does his best with the equipment he's equipped with now in his life. And I know what that's like. So, two things. I grab the agenda and it's like clockwork. The planners still don't get it. In the under 2.1 recommendation says receive the staff report, receive testimony from the applicant and the appellant, open public comment, receive public testimony, close public comment and public hearing, discuss and deliberate, and adopt resolution, yada, yada. Come on. I don't want them telling you or us. They make that determination. Somebody comes down, somebody's making an appeal, and they see that. If that was me, all hell break loose, because that's not right. You deliberate, and then you determine and direct staff. Something, but not just go from deliberate to adopt. I've been seeing that since '87 with the planning people in this city, and it's damn tiring. Very tiring. If not, nauseating. Anyway, so if an appeal was filed, the appeal had 8 points, right? That was shown. There's 8 points that the appellant made. I would like to see us go back to that. I don't want to hear about the housing and all this. Just address each of the 8 appeal points, discuss it, and pass judgment on it. Boom, 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 like that. So that the audience, myself included, the appellant, the people watching it, can see it and know how you five feel about each of those things. That, to me, would be the appropriate path, and it would be informative for all of us out here. Thank you.
All right, thank you. All right, next speaker, please.
Kirsten Denatov.
Thank you for my time. I've never come down before, but as a resident, when I see what's going on, it's really disappointing. And I know I should have come down sooner, but I hope as we continue to develop the city, it's really disappointing to see all the trees that have been cut down. I heard they're all diseased. I don't think all the redwoods were, but I hope that you would consider in future things to allow a little more space for trees so that we don't have some of the development where there's literally 5 feet between the streets. I would love to walk in the city. I still walk in the city, live at the top of Bollinger, but I'm very concerned about the traffic that's going to happen in the city. It's terrible already. Walking down from the top of Bollinger is super dangerous. And I can't imagine what's going to happen when all this housing comes in. I mean, I would love a walkable city. I'm still going to walk in the city, but I really do think some of the concerns about traffic are an issue. And I really would ask if we could get more details on how all of this is going to work. It's terrible already. It takes me like 20 minutes to go from my house at the top of Bollinger 2 miles to Costco. And that's before all of this housing comes in. Takes me maybe 15 minutes to go 1 mile to the freeway from, literally a mile. And we're going to just keep putting all this traffic in the city, and I'm just not sure how this is going to work. So those are some things that I really would hope says we're going to have reviews, but I just haven't seen it over the years as long as I've been a resident. I mean, I worked at Chevron for 35 years. There's beautiful oak trees on that property. And I can see with some of the development, some of it's being maintained, but a lot of it's going to go away. And we're going to have all these tall buildings in the city. When I like seeing the mountains, and you're going to build all these tall buildings that I don't get to see. So I just hope going forward, I know there's other people in the city that feel like that you'll consider some of this stuff, because it just seems like we raise issues and nobody listens to us. So thank you for your time.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Susan Clayton.
Good evening, Mayor, council members. I'm more educated this time. Thank you to Ryan Driscoll, if you're in the room, for educating me and getting me linked up to all the documentation. I've made it through about 400 pages since the last time I was here. Probably have another 400 to go. I just wanted to comment that I really struggled to reconcile the 2040 city plan to the Orchards plan on several fronts, but most notably, I couldn't reconcile the math or the calculus on acreage of parkland per 1,000 per capita people within a half-mile distance. It was not, I think there's a 2.5 acre park going in for 2,500 families. And so the math is off there, and I couldn't reconcile how the city staffs up our police force to maintain a 0.82 per 1,000 people officer coverage. And I thought that the traffic report that I listened to, now I realize I can also go read 175 pages more of it. I thought it was off base. It was based on 2021, 2022 traffic patterns. Those are the COVID years. I myself wasn't going to the office in 21, 22, it was twice a week. Traffic is much different. And so to attach a growth rate on the COVID year traffic doesn't make any sense to me. It seems like it should have been cumulative of all this other development. I drove my husband past all 7 build sites here and said, this is where the density is happening. Everybody's going to have a car. It's already a struggle to go to Target. Like if I cross over San Ramon Valley Boulevard and try to go to Target, I live up on Bollinger Canyon. That's a long drive. That's a very long drive. It's not a place I go very often anymore. It's same thing with the Whole Foods and the lot. Can't get in there, but we're going to add all this density. So that's, just the point of view of a resident. It's just not reconciling to be adding those 4 to 7 story tall buildings along the corridor of Bollinger Canyon, which already has a pretty significant traffic problem. And then just the height, as Kirsten was mentioning, our footprint of the city and our valley doesn't aesthetically support that kind of linearity. It's just going to look really bad. And I would urge you to cut it down a story or 2. And then just the permanence of the land, once it's gone, and we're going to build it all out and there'll be nothing left. So this is what I'm worried about. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Jim Blickenstaff.
Good evening, Mayor and Vice Mayor and Council. I just wanted to briefly make a couple of points that might help clarify a little bit. Well, first of all, I'm to be clear and obvious, I'm not a lawyer, but there are some legal questions here that seem to come to mind for me that basically have to do with some state laws and then some local laws. And so to get the definitive answer, I'll be sending the full text of the appeal to Greenfire just to get that opinion of if it rises to the level of significance in terms of legal status. That's for my benefit to kind of have an understanding of where we stand on this. But there's a lot of points that seem to have validity to them that should be thoroughly analyzed, thoughtfully analyzed. But for example, there's something that comes to mind with me that a program EIR is different than a project EIR. The key words are general for the program and specific for the project. And that is putting stuff on the ground, which is a physical reality compared to the concept. And so you can't substitute a program EIR for a project EIR. And that's where this crossover happens a little bit. And that's not, that's why they call them two different things, because they're different animals and they need to be treated with a certain point of view that deals with that level of specificity that the general one, the program one has, and then the specific on-the-ground details that the project one has, and that can have different environmental consequences. So I'd say we have to be a little careful about leaning on the program EIR as if that's a solution to a specific project. And the housing element of the general plan is an important one. It's significant, and it gets a lot of credence at the state level with lobbyists and state officials. But it shouldn't diminish other parts of the general plan that are also relevant in terms of that status. And obviously, one of those is open space and parks. That shouldn't diminish that as a part of the, it's called the Constitution. General plan is called the city's constitution. It shouldn't be diminished because we're focusing on all the housing elements, which is a key factor, but it's only one factor in a big equation that relates to the quality of life. So for example, on the orchards, you would have a project EIR looking at the parks needed in terms of the general plan, and then giving recommendations of mitigations that could work for the city to consider. And that would be more specific to a project. So I just wanted to say that there's some things here that need to be looked at seriously. I hope you take the time to do that. And I hope you're not required to make a final decision tonight if there's still some open questions, because that would probably, that could end up backfiring. I'm just not sure what would happen, but you want to be very careful about just taking care of things, being very thorough, and then that'll kind of resolve it on both sides of this issue. So thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Susie Ferris Inderkum.
Good evening, Mayor, Vice Mayor, council members. I realize, of course, that I will be speaking tonight only to Mr. Armstrong and Mr. Barros, but I'm here tonight to represent Responsible Growth San Ramon and Citizens Against the Marketplace. This is not the first project appeal against a project approval that included a CEQA notice of exemption, a notice of exemption that did not meet all 4 of the required CEQA points. That is part of the staff review. So my personal opinion, I didn't think having Sunset give you another project overview was necessary for an appeal hearing that was very specific to the notice of exemption. Further, this is not the only challenge to a notice of exemptions stating no impact for VMT, again, based on the fact that it was a very flawed, if any, analysis on the vehicle miles traveled. They only looked at the vehicle miles traveled being reduced because people would live on the property on Marketplace, and not on the impact to the entire community that depended on the full-service grocery store that was being torn down, the drugstore that was being removed, and all the distances that those people were going to have to now travel to get the items they could no longer get in that particular shopping center. That was not done. And it's also not the first, so what I'm really trying to say is that as a result of that, there is no mitigation plan, there's no enforcement determinations or criteria for enforcing situations in the Marketplace. In particular, parking, et cetera, that was a condition of project approval, but you have no mitigation plan. You have no vehicle mile traveled report for it. You didn't even have an EIR to begin with. So you don't even have that to reference back. And as you know, it is an ongoing litigation, but everything I'm saying is public record right now because all the documents have been submitted. So what I'm saying to you is that this won't be the only appeal if you deny it. There will be others because the process of evaluation and approval for staff giving notices of exemption is a problem. It's a serious problem. And that is not something that is resolved just by an EIR. There has to be a completed, detailed notice of exemption or notice of determination. And it really should be a notice of determination that comes out of the Planning Commission first, and then notice of exemption from the staff on the Planning Department. So my final comment, and I apologize for being over, is that I ask you to approve the appeal because this is such a massive undertaking in comparison to the Marketplace that I think you should approve it, and you should have staff take the time to do a better analysis on this, complete the CEQA analysis properly, and do a better job on the VMT mileage. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Next speaker, please.
Sharayas?
Greetings, City Council. Thank you for taking the time to allow me to speak. I could, go over the rules. I could go over CEQA. I could go over the housing requirements. But frankly, that would be beating a dead horse, and I don't think it'd be worth too much time. So I'm going to try to appeal more on the emotional front and the logical front. San Ramon as a city is fundamentally built upon its people. And admittedly, there are concerns over whether or not the development of the city is going to have negative impacts. I totally understand that. I'm sure you as the council understand that. The Planning Commission understands that. However, progress as a whole is one of those inevitable things about human society that really just cannot be overlooked. When Washington, D.C. was initially laid out, it would have been so easy to say, why not stay in Philadelphia? Why not just keep things where they were? That's how it had been since the Revolutionary War had started. But did Pierre Charles L'Enfant, who designed DC, look at it and say, no, we can't do this? No, he took it as a challenge. Yes, the conditions near the Potomac River aren't ideal. It's a bit of a swamp. But look at where we are now. DC is our home. It's our capital. The same thing applies here. The inevitability of progress is one of those things that cannot be understated by any means. And the importance of progress cannot be understated either. Orchard gives us a chance to allow folks who may not have the best opportunities in life, who may be looking for a fresh start, to step out and say, yes, I can make it. I can live here. I'm comfortable here. And think about the opportunities that Orchard could also bring. New businesses in the places of old ones, or even old businesses coming back into new spaces that are safer and more accessible. And I understand the traffic concern, but frankly speaking, we wouldn't have had, a 350-page report on environmental concerns. We wouldn't have had a 300-something page concern on the on the traffic impact. We wouldn't have had, I don't know, God on 3,500 pages of reports to begin with if we didn't think this was possible. Change is not always the best thing in the world. But for us in San Ramon, change is one of those things that we really do need. Because when I came to the city, some 12 years ago, well, not 12, 14, it was kind of stodgy. And now look at it. It's wonderful. So I'll leave you with this. Yes, there are concerns, but given the previous precedent that was set by all our previous projects and the prospects that we have in front of us, I'd say deny the appeal. Let's go forward with this for all of our sakes, for the sake of a brighter San Ramon. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
There are no more speaker cards, but we did receive 4 public comment, written public comment that are before you and in the back of the room in the red binder, and also some late communication, additional supplemental information from the appellant Brian Swanson, which again is before you and in the red folder in the back of the room.
Okay. All right, then can I get a motion to close the public hearing?
So move.
Okay, we have a motion, Vice Mayor Rubio, second by Councilman Radler to close the public hearing. Okay. Public hearing is closed. So now it's I'm going to give the opportunity an opportunity to the appellant to provide a few minutes of rebuttal.
Before starting, Mr. Swanson, can I just need to grab the correct timer? And when you're ready.
Thank you for the opportunity to address again. I know I'm pretty fired up, but I think you obviously understand where I'm coming from. 2 quick corrections related to density and TOD and the impacts or less impacts associated with BMT. Realize what you've done. You talked the density game, but you've reduced the FAR significantly in both DMU North and now in DMU South. That's just a record correction and awareness type thing and an accountability thing. I'll close my comments relative to process. Mr. Carr has added, but I'm just going to repeat it again. What if it is totally applicable here and going through a zoning amendment, I don't have any control over that process. What you've done here is created a appeal cost moat, a financial moat, and have allowed Sunset to implement its development program fast and furious without any regard to CEQA. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, so at this time, we are gonna guess we're gonna discuss it here amongst the council on where we want to go forward from here. So we're not ready for a motion, but we're ready for kind of deliberation and final comments. So who'd like to start off? Okay. Oh, you want to go?
You go ahead, you can start. Mayor.
All right, well, I mean, I'll start off and then we'll see where everyone else wants to go. First, I want to thank the staff. I want to thank the appellant, thank the applicant as well, the public for speaking out tonight, as well as for the written comments. And I do appreciate the questions that were raised in the appeal. And I do believe that it helped to clarify several aspects of the project for not just the council, but for overall for the community. But I see my role as to kind of evaluate the process and whether we've followed the process that was available to us. My role is not to, prove whether the project is perfect. Only that I'm here to determine whether or not the planning commission made an error or whether the city followed the appropriate law and process. And I do believe that the city did follow the appropriate law and process. And I thought that the responses in the staff report, point by point within the appeal, were adequately explained. The city did not avoid an environmental review on this project. The environmental impacts of the development at this site were analyzed as part of the General Plan 2040, EIR. State law specifically allows projects that are consistent with that plan and density to rely on prior environmental analysis unless there are project-specific impacts that are unique to the site. So for me, based on the record before us, including the CEQA consistency checklist and technical studies, I'm satisfied that the city followed the CEQA process appropriately and that there are no new or peculiar impacts that would require additional environmental review at this stage. So, but I am interested to hear what my fellow council members have to say. But at this point, I am inclined to support the Planning Commission's decision and deny the appeal. Over to you.
Thanks. I don't want to repeat again what Mayor said, thanks everyone for being here. So definitely we understand the concern from Brian. Thanks for bringing this to our attention. We appreciate it's this is what makes us as a community to review, to make sure we are accountable for what we are approving or we are disapproving. So thanks for all your participation, right? But then coming to each of your point, that we all, pretty much all of us, try to see what evidence do you have for each of these points that you raised. For example, the first one, when you said CEQA guidelines section 15183 is being treated as long-term environmental clearance for 20 years, phased master plan contrary to CEQA's intent and city's own record, which is clearly explained that it is not a 20-year blanket approval. This is going to be project phase-wise, it is going to be approved. Okay, so that was pretty clearly explained. Okay, and then coming on to the VMT and GHG that you mentioned. So VMT screening and climate analysis that covers neighborhood district as well as the master plan. Also mitigation consistent with prior EIR and enforceable wherever it is required. And significant unavoidable impacts acknowledged. No new evidence is presented. When we, at least for my questions, your answers were always whatever the decade-old data we used, but that's not true. I see that our staff used whatever the latest compliance regulations that we are supposed to use, we used that one. About even the other thing about your concern on tribal and cultural protections, conditions require monitoring and protection of discovered resources. City responded and they did receive the response from the tribal offices as well as the whatever the obligations that as a city we need to do, we completed that. So pretty much I don't see any evidence as such. We all tried our best to see what you can provide us. The only thing I keep hearing is that whatever the work our staff did as well as our consultant did is not substantial. That's all you keep saying, but you need to provide us evidence for each of these, that why you think that they are not appropriate or right. So that's what my my thought process is, that I wish I could get more evidence supporting your arguments.
Okay. Who'd like to go next? Anyone have any other comments they want to make? Councilmember Adler.
Yeah. I think one of the reasons I ask about SB 330 is that I think you have to look at the CEQA guidelines along with SB 330. And, you know, certainly the state really wants to get more housing, and they are trying to accelerate that. And I know that that is not, obviously, you've got to look at each plan. And, but I think the applicant has, you know, it's been a long process, and there have been a number of changes, and there's been a number of items that the Planning Commission asked the applicant to change or modify, and it has been done, I think, to my satisfaction. And I think, you know, when you look at the Housing Accountability Act, if we were to deny this, you know, we've got to look at the repercussions of our actions. If we were to deny this, I think we would be making a mistake. We can't just say, if we were to deny it, that there is a basis to deny it, a basis. But we must also find that there is no reasonable basis for approval. And the city attorney might, if I'm wrong on this, he might correct me, but it's a much higher threshold for denial than the traditional rational basis has, you know, previously applied to, you know, for other projects in the past. So I think it would be very difficult. I think we have done, you know, due diligence, and there is enough evidence for a reasonable person to conclude the project is consistent with law on the books now. So because of that, I feel like there's good reason for us to approve this project and to deny the appeal. Thank you.
All right. Councilmember Zweinert or Vice Mayor Rubio? Okay, Vice Mayor.
Sorry. So, I will just say, after reading every single point that was brought forward, there was an answer, a very specific answer to each item given. And I tried my best to try to get really pinned down what it was specifically that was being sought or missing. And the only response I heard were generalities of intuition rather than something specific that merits another EIR being done or additional studies. The only circumstance under which there's a government code that specifies when an EIR is needed has to be significant changes that would somehow trigger that. But if it's not, that's definition of significant has to really be quite substantial. And so I don't see necessarily what we did when the FAR was increased. It provided was for more affordable housing. And that was one of the main reasons that we went with that, so that we could provide more affordable housing. And the assumption is also that, you know, many of those people will hopefully be staying more local rather than commuting very far away. But again, nobody has a crystal ball. We don't know. But the point is that there are stepwise mitigating steps that will take place after the completion of each project, there was a specification in the language where it said the EIR and the VMTs would be reevaluated. And I think that, to me, at least reassures me that when we're done with one phase of it, we're going to check where things are at, how things are going. But I also really, in the midst of all of this, I feel like there may be, we may be forgetting the fact that we actually are experiencing setbacks as a result of not having enough young people living in San Ramon. The fact that we don't have young families, we don't have enough students in our schools. We just had 200 employees discharged from the school district because they don't have enough money. They depend on something called the local control funding formula, and it is very dependent on enrollment, and we're under enrolled. That comes from the school district, not from me. So if we don't have that an adequate enrollment, our students are going to continue to struggle. Our schools will continue to struggle. So I guess what I'm saying is it kind of goes beyond just looking at it as housing. We really have to look at the greater impacts. And as was mentioned in terms of utilities, everything has to go through sort of a screening process. The schools have to say, it's, oh, okay, we can accommodate that. The school water district has to be able to say, hey, we can, that's a feasible project. We can meet those demands. And those were met. There was no specific, peculiar, or particular concern of some potential toxin or something that would require trigger an EIR either. Another EIR. There's, you know, I think Councilmember Veros kind of touched on the first two reasons, and the uncertain thresholds. That was reason number 3. And that is what the city is following is the current Governor's Office of Planning and Research Guidance and Contra Costa Transportation Authority guidance, not local or project-based thresholds. So, but that is, there is a metric that's being followed, whether that's local or state default minimum requirement. And so, and then some of these other things like techno studies without demonstrated independent verification undermines impartiality and the city's duty of independent judgment. Some of this is, you know, again, there were multiple rounds. The response from the city said here, multiple rounds of peer reviewed of each document were conducted by the city's traffic engineer, engineering staff, and planning staff before the report was finalized. Staff and the environmental consultants' conclusions are independently formed and based on the accepted technical review of the subject matter experts. Then the tribal issue, they did reach out to the known tribal entities, and there was, they received a response from the Confederated Villages of Lijan tribe. The applicant, let's see, subsequently, the applicant rescinded the request for a general plan amendment under these circumstances. Consultation pursuant to SB 18 was no longer technically required. And then, but there's also still in there mitigating, say for some reason, they break ground and they find something in the ground that would trigger, we may have hit something that we didn't, nobody had any way of foreseeing. There would have to stop development at that point. And excuse me, I just want to make sure people aren't talking from the audience with me. So there are mitigating factors that they would have to stop development at that point and turn to a professional archaeologist who would do the assessment and determine what needs to be done at that juncture. Then reason number 3, processing integrity, transparency, meaningful public participation statutory streamlining cannot substitute for a complete, coherent, and legally defensible record. The city went through 5 meetings, which is the maximum allowed under SB 330. And the thing is, through what I don't understand is that this language, I tried to ask specifically, what was not transparent? What merited more information specifically? Again, no specific answer, just it's not specific enough for my flavor, is not sufficient. We need specifics because I can't help if I don't know specifically what is the problem. And then the appeal process, opacity and lack of guardrails, deposit-driven process with an undefined work product. The city explained that the appellant's concerns on the city's appeal process are unrelated to the Orchards development project. Changes to the appeal process can be pursued by the appellant separate from this project through an amendment to the city zoning ordinance. And then finally, for the reason 8 for appeal was a CEQA notice terminology correction. As was mentioned, there is no new information provided by the appellant that would demonstrate that the Planning Commission erred in reviewing and approving the project based on the appeal information provided and the record of decision. And they also did take note of what was, was provided by the appellant. But so the appellant's correction was noted. Anyhow, after going through all of this, I really, really was trying to get an answer, like a very specific thing that I could say, okay, maybe we didn't look at this. This is what's specifically missing. We need to go back and look further in this specific area. But unless there's some specific concern, like I would think, for example, extensive EIRs are required if you're going to develop adjacent to or over a prior gas station, for example. Why? Because that soil tends to be contaminated. It has to be thoroughly cleaned out. There's nothing here that would trigger any of this. So unless somebody can really define that better, it's really hard to justify starting all over again. And again, it's not like we're just, this is going to go without checks and balances along the way. And that's the really key important part. So that's my comment.
All right, thank you. All right, before we kind of start wrapping it up here and look to how we want to resolve it with a resolution, I want to turn to the city attorney for a moment and just ask some questions that might help me. There's a couple of questions that are going to kind of summarize in my mind where we're going with some of the stuff tonight. And the first one is that what I heard Cindy Yee say was that the land use that was approved for the Orchards Master Plan and the Neighborhood District Project is consistent with the land use for DMU South as described in General Plan 2040. Is that correct?
Yes, that's entirely correct.
With the exception of the 6 requested state density bonus waivers and that sort of thing.
Yes.
Okay. All right. And then I also heard from Mary Bean tonight from First Carbon Solutions that the General Plan 2040 EIR anticipated the Orchards project and that the current Orchards Master Plan and Neighborhood Project introduces nothing peculiar, so that the 15183 exception is valid. Is that correct?
By my reading of the record, I found nothing peculiar in that was associated with this project proposal.
Okay. And then I also heard in the presentation or kind of confirmed with the staff report that all of the current projects that have been approved so far in the city core area since the publication of General Plan 2040 by the Planning Commission are also consistent with the general plan 2040. Is that also a correct interpretation?
That would be consistent with my review of the record, yes.
Okay. All right, thank you. Those are my questions that final questions. Any other final comments or questions? Because then we have to decide a way forward with we're gonna have to get a motion on how to resolve resolution or to continue. Whether we're gonna, let me just ask any final questions, comments?
No, really quick, I just want to thank the appellant for putting the work together. Thank you for the staff putting the work together. Really appreciate it. I've been a resident for 10 years here. I think we're all residents here. So we all see and feel the impacts that everybody else feels. But tonight was an appeal that we had to review. And if you haven't gone through an appeal process before, it's raising an appeal that there was something that was legally incorrect or something that was illegal or something that wasn't done procedurally. And our job is to review the evidence, review those facts and apply them. And there really wasn't any. And I do thank Mr. Swanson for the effort they put in, but a lot of it really just came down to what Vice Mayor said was there's not enough information. But as we heard from public comment and others as well, people had to go through hundreds of pages. It's not hundreds of pages of nothing. It's not 5 meetings where we just sat down and did nothing. There was a lot of discussion, a lot of conversation, a lot of debate about it. And I'm sure that, and if I did my homework as well before Ms. Hill, if I could ask you a quick question, how many applications were submitted on the orchards, just in general, if you could, and revisions?
I believe there are 7 separate applications.
7, yeah. Okay.
Submittals of various components from November of 2024 through 2025.
Okay, so 4 rounds over several years. Okay, yeah. And so, there's a lot of effort that goes into it. So this is what it feels like tonight was, we don't want housing. That's what it felt like tonight, the argument. That's what my takeaway was, we don't want housing. Mayor, I agree with you. I think, I don't think there's enough sufficient evidence here to warrant approving the appeal.
Okay, any other final comments? Okay, so then we need to get a motion to either adopt or modify or reject the resolution that's we saw before us in the staff pack, and I'm going to kind of state what that resolution is. Resolution number 2026-040. And that resolution currently denies the appeal filed by Brian Swanson and approves the Orchards Development Project MJ 2024-004, DP 2024-0006, DP 2024-0008, AR 2024-0013, TRP 2024-0009, and ENVR 2025-0003, located at 6001 Boulder Canyon Road, subject to the project findings and conditions of approval. So can I get a motion to either adopt, modify, or reject that resolution as read?
I move to adopt the resolution as read.
I second.
Okay, so we have a motion to adopt the resolution, which is denying the appeal filed by Brian Swanson and approving the Orchards Development Project as stated earlier. Motion by Councilmember Zweinat, second by Councilmember Adler. Okay, motion passes 5-0. And with that, City Attorney, is there any other administrative action to take at this point?
Other than adjournment, no.
Okay. All right, then, thank everybody for their time this evening. Meeting is adjourned.